Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the November 22nd meeting of the Portland City Council. Would you please call the roll?
Novick. Fritz.
Here.
Fish. Here. Saltzman.
Here.
Hales.
Here. Good morning, everyone, and welcome. We have some folks signed up for communications. We'll get to that first and then to our council business. We have had a couple requests to pull items off the consent calendar, namely 1303 and 1307. Any other items that anyone wants to take off consent? Okay, so we'll act on the balance of the consent calendar a little later. Welcome, everybody. If you're here to speak on a council calendar item this morning, you probably already have signed up, but if you haven't, there's sign-up sheets outside, and our council clerk can make sure that you're on the list. We are going to have a lot of people speaking on the principal item on this morning's calendar, and so we're going to limit testimony to 2 minutes apiece and ask that you not be repetitive because we want to hear from everyone. If you haven't come to testify at Portland City Council before, you need only give your name. You don't need to give your address. If you're representing an organization, you do need to let us know who you're representing. And then we practice the rules of decorum here, and that is that if you agree with someone's point of view and you want to show some support for their point of view, feel free to give them a hand gesture of support. And if you disagree, a polite hand gesture to the negative is okay, but we ask that we not applaud or boo or make vocal demonstrations in favor or against our fellow Portlanders' points of view here. We make exceptions for students and visiting dignitaries, so if you are one or both of those things, you might get a round of applause from all of us because we appreciate them and we want to give them some special love. So that's the rules of procedure. Obviously, if someone's disruptive, we'll ask them to stop, and if they're not able to stop or willing to stop, we'll exclude them. But the point here is so that you can all be heard. With that, we will start with item number 1294, which is our first communications item.
1294, request of Peter Rink to address council regarding Eagle Scout project of care packages for the homeless. Go ahead, Peter.
Welcome back, Peter. It's nice to have you here.
Thank you very much.
So, last time we saw each other, I informed you that I was going to be doing a care project which involved making care packages for the homeless. And let me just say, it was a complete success. On September 24th, at approximately 11 o'clock to 12 o'clock, I handed out 250 care packages at the Blanchet House. The rest of them I handed out to a nearby fair provided by the Union Gospel Mission. We started off by making the care packages in 2 meetings before this date so that we could have every scout contribute in any way, shape, or form. Also, it was kind of nice seeing the reaction of homeless people upon learning that they would be receiving a care package. They felt that there was hope, and there were some people caring for the homeless out there. Yeah.
Wow.
Peter, I have a question for you.
Yes?
And thanks, this is your second visit, and we really appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate you reporting back.
So we're taking a look at the care packet you put together. How did you choose what you put in this?
Well, I talked to the head of the Blanchet House, and he gave me some suggestions. I talked to some of my family, some of my friends, my Eagle Scout mentor, who so happens to be here today. They told me what they believe I should add in my care packages. I had my own personal input, and then I got the items, either by donation or by purchasing them.
Or garage sale.
Yes, a garage.
This effort took about a year of his time in multiple phases.
Wow. Well, what else have you learned about Portland's homeless community you've obviously met a lot of homeless people in this project. What advice do you have for us as a city council and for us as a city based on what you've learned by all this firsthand relationship?
Sorry to interrupt. Well, what I'd say is that everybody can contribute in one way, shape, or form in one way. If we all work together, we can all contribute to we can all help this homeless problem come to an end at last. Well, not just by making care packages, but by doing something for the homeless community, by having your place be open for the homeless people during the Thanksgiving season so that they can have a nice, good meal to eat.
That's great. Well, you'll be happy to know that we're opening yet another shelter today. It's in donated space from a local business owner who has a vacant floor in his building. His name is Tom Cody. It's called the Peace Shelter 2 because another local property owner did a similar thing last winter, and so other people are following your good advice. So thank you. Well, I said we make exceptions for students and student leaders. I think we should make an exception for you and say bravo.
Thank you very much.
you.
It's so glad to learn about the shelter idea. I think I'll go pay a visit to it one of these days.
Good, please do, and thanks for being a leader.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Keep it up.
Thank you.
Good job, Peter. Wow, nice way to start our council meeting today. Okay, 1295, please.
1295, request of Julie Reardon to address council regarding corporate securities do not buy list. She can't make it today and apologizes for that.
Okay, and that item's on the council calendar next week, so 1296.
1296, request of Steve Myers to address council regarding corporate securities do not buy list.
Okay, Mr. Myers, you here? Okay, come on up, please. Good morning and welcome. Please, yes, thank you. Morning.
Yeah, hello. I'm probably a little nervous,
Just have a
but anyway,
conversation.
Julie Reardon asked me to speak here because she's one of the environmentalists that heard me speak up twice at Milwaukee City Hall and a couple other places. And then I made it to the last meeting they had October 21st at the Leighton Darling Medical School. And I used to work at Precision Cast Parts. But the thing is, I was involved in an industrial accident years ago and it was breaking news. Precision Cast Parts had a fire. And what didn't work was their fire alarm and their sprinkler system. And I worked in a walk-in sandblast booth. My only source of air was from that compressor. The compressor totally engulfed in flames. It said a chemical caused it on fire. And because the fire department didn't know there was 2 people in the building, and there was a guy there from a temper agency, the company had me working overtime, 12 hours a day for 13 months. And on this particular day, it was after 5 o'clock, and there was a guy there from a temporary agency they were going to train to work the swing shift, and he was unsupervised. He bothered me on 3 different occasions because his machine wouldn't let him work. And I told him this company made a lot of money. They didn't care about the equipment to enjoy his break. And then he came over a 4th time, and shortly after he left the 4th time, my respirator totally filled up with a cloud. But only the guy that trained me to work in the machine, there's a grate underneath the machine with spiral grates that recycle this aluminum D zirconia until it's dust. He told me if that hose blew underneath, it could back into this Billiard 41 air filter that's only purpose was to remove moisture, did not make grade D breathable air as they recorded. So when that first happened, I thought that's what it was. And by the time I took off my respirator, there was a black cloud rolling out of it. And there's a fire alarm in your machine to where if you hear it, it's supposed to shut the machine off so you don't breathe bad air. And there was a blinking red light at eye level. It never went off. So I'm backing up to the door. This smoke is billowing out of this respirator. And this guy's name was James Ashpole. He worked at Barrett Business Services. They later hired him. He was my witness. When he opened the door, I almost fell out backwards, and I wiped my face off. My face was covered with smoke. And then while I was talking to him, that plastic respirator caught on fire, and he told me he could hear helicopters outside. And they walled in our area for noise, and then they put in a big garage door with seals. He peeked out the back door, and he told me there's a fire helicopter in the air, 3 news helicopters, and a whole row of emergency vehicles, and everybody standing around talking about a fire. We're both going, what fire? Not even a fire alarm. So when you open up the roll-up door, you could not even see each other in your own hand. Next thing you know, Mr. Ashpole was freaking out, and I said, I've been in this department 13 months. I said, the sandblast machine's to your left. We find the sandblast machine, we go to the wall, and in the whole building, the only door that wasn't marked, emergency exit on the outside and locked, or had battery backup lights, was that room. So I told him, we find the door, and the first one that finds the door gets a light, tells the other one to go. So I went outside, and he followed me out, and the fire department documented, they overlooked me and the other fellow, and I went straight to the fire department because my lead and supervisor could care less. And all the fire department was said, they attended to 1 person, no casualty. They talked to me later. So I tracked down the plant manager. He later became the vice president. His name was John Erickson.
Appreciate you coming and telling us your story, because we talk about these things in the abstract, and you've helped make it real, so we
So then
appreciate
they
you coming.
rented a diesel power compressor and plumbed it into the remnants of the building. And the next day, James Ashball reported to his supervisor he could smell and taste diesel fuel.
Wow.
And then
So-
this company for
No,
two and a
I have-
half weeks,
I have to
anyway.
stop you. I have to stop you because you've used your time, but obviously you've got an amazing and appalling
Oh,
story,
plus,
so.
I got a bunch of stuff on the pollution at Precision
Well,
Castparts.
do leave any of that for us that you're willing to leave, because obviously we're going to be talking about this again next week, and, you know, your experience is
And here's a
important.
copy of the fire report.
Okay.
And it's got the incident number, the response number, and insured amount, 0.
Wow.
And then this company, I know they allow big companies, it's kind of like skirting the law not to post an surety bond, but any small company has to post one through an insurance company. Precision Castparts is in the insurance company, and this is what I pulled up.
So I do
About
ask
the
you,
insurance.
I do have to ask you to stop, but I really appreciate you bringing all this, and do leave us copies of any of that you'd like. And again, this will be on the council calendar again next week. So if you're able to come back, obviously we can hear more from you then, but we've got to move on this morning. So, thank you so much for coming.
Anyway, have you read all the articles in the Portland Tribune about
We-
Precision
We
Castparts? You
will,
know why
we
they're
will,
there?
we'll
Because of
certainly want to
myself.
read that.
And here's
So-
an email from Robert Pamplin
Sir,
Jr.
I got to ask you to stop because we got to let others speak, but I really appreciate you coming and letting us know about this. And again, feel free to come back next week when we have this on the council calendar.
Well, anyway, when I got hurt on the job, this thing here says they're on the non-compliant list because they originally had Sedgwick and James handle my claim. My original accepted claim was chemically induced bronchitis. At the time, they had me inhaling diesel vapor mist through a respirator for 3 weeks after leaving you in a fire where the firemen know the toxins won't kill you. And then here's a list of my medication list I have to take since then. And that less than 4 years ago, the Centers for Disease Control in NIOSH, I got the chemists and
I
scientists
appreciate-
helped create
appreciate
a law
you-
prove they
yeah,
gave me
I
a
know
really
you've got
rare
a lot-
occupational disease.
I know you've got
and
a
they
lot of
still
information.
never paid me. It's not a good company.
Sir, I appreciate all the information and thank you for being here today.
I even
And
contacted Aaron Brock.
Do let us know anything else that you want us to know before we take action on this next week. Thank you so much. No, I've got to stop you. All right.
Need to
Make sure,
move on.
sir, make sure you leave. Sure, make sure you leave all that information for us, okay? Thank you very much. So we need to call on the next person now, and thank you for coming. That would be,
The company won't take care of their own employees. to get
I
their own
understand.
job, And their only defense is it never happened when you can prove it
we
happened.
we appreciate, yeah, we appreciate hearing from you, sir. I've got to ask you to stop.
On their butt and all my complaints.
Sir, we've got a lot of folks here.
Several complaints after they legally fired me because I blew the whistle.
Mr. Myers,
They offered
thank
a
you.
global settlement, then took it off the table, and they show up
Mr. Myers, I do need to ask you to stop now. I'm sorry. Thank
So
you.
if they don't care about their own employees, why would they give a crap about anybody in the neighborhood?
Okay,
And
Mr.
I
Myers.
spoke up at that meeting, and Mark Gamba, the mayor of Milwaukee, who led it, and I brought up the fact that
Mr. Myers.
radioactive sand that is washing into the Columbia is coming from Precision
Okay.
Castparts, and I got pictures from where it starts and where it
Mr. Myers, I do need to ask you to stop. Thank you so much. Thanks for coming. All right, let's hear from Mr. Busoltz, 1297.
Item 1297, request of Gary Buchaltz to address council regarding criminal activity at homeless camp and law enforcement.
Thank you for coming. Good morning.
Morning, Mayor Hills and fellow city
Oh, wait a
commissioners.
second, she's got to key the mic there. There we go. You don't have to get too close to it. Just,
Okay.
it'll be on in a second. There you go.
Good morning. I'm just going to read a statement, that way it makes more sense. I'm speaking to you now to address the issue of criminal activity being allowed to happen with near impunity in our neighborhood. Over the past 3 months, the Sunnyside neighborhood experienced what many other neighborhoods have been experiencing for quite a long time now. A camp was set up on Southeast Belmont and 32nd Avenue, partly on PGE property and partly on city property. Before you sigh and think, oh, another complaint about the homeless, please understand that this is not a homeless issue. There are many homeless living in Sunnyside, living in cars, tents, and sometimes just under a tarp. We as a community feel for these people, have gotten to know many of them by name, and we do what we can for them. This is not about them. This is about criminals using the disguise of homelessness to wreak havoc on our neighborhood. We as a community learned that the city of Portland, for all practical purposes, does not distinguish nor recognize that there are two distinct groups of people living on our streets. One that deserves our compassion, our help and support, and one that deserves our vigilance and strict enforcement of our laws. By not recognizing these two distinct groups, we allow the genuinely homeless to be stereotyped as criminals and also allow them to be victims of crime themselves by the same people. It took over 2 months for our community through constant phone calls to multiple agencies, media outlets, and outreach organizations to remove this criminal enterprise from our streets. It should not be that difficult. When $3,000 bicycles are being dropped off and disassembled on the sidewalk, vehicles with either no license plates, no registration tags, or registration that expired 3 years ago are present, it should not take an entire community to hold meetings, make dozens of phone calls, and several on-air news reports to get the city to act. We as community members should not have to keep track of 5 different incident numbers from 5 different offices to get the city to understand the problem. Oregon Revised Code allows for immediate impoundment of vehicles that are operated without license plates, yet we are told that a certain dollar amount of tickets needs to be met before the vehicle will be towed. For several days, the sidewalk was completely blocked, along with a canopy erected over it to keep the disassembled bike parts dry. This is in direct violation of the American with Disabilities Act. Do we, as community members, need to file suit with ADA every time this happens to get something done? The amount of resources that went into this criminal camp, both by community and by the city, is unnecessary and unacceptable. The police responded half a dozen times. The fire department twice for 2 fires that were burning there. PGE security countless times more. All of this money that can be spent elsewhere, helping the genuinely homeless. What can be done? I propose that the city recognize that there are 2 camps of homeless that, when identified, need to be held accountable for their actions through timely enforcement of current laws. I propose that criminal camps, once identified, be given a single reference number that can be used by the police, Office of Neighborhood Involvement, PGE, and Bureau of Environmental Services, and other city offices involved in these issues to make it easier for communities to more effectively engage the city to deal with the criminal activity. Again, we all understand that there's a homeless problem, and this is not about them. These people need protection from the criminal part of this as well. And they're known. They're doing it blatantly out in the open. And we also understand the restraints on police responses. But when it's identified, it should be dealt with in a more strict manner with the laws that we already have.
No, thank you. Thanks for coming. Obviously, you have a prepared statement. If you have a chance to send us a copy of that, because you mentioned multiple bureaus that are involved, the parking enforcement folks at the Bureau of Transportation and police and Office of Neighborhood Involvement, it'd be useful for us to be able to distribute your comments to them.
Will do.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for coming.
Appreciate it.
Okay, let's take the consent calendar, again, minus the 2 items that we've pulled off for discussion. Any further discussion about the consent calendar? Let's take a roll call vote then, please, on the balance of the consent calendar.
Fritz.
Aye.
Fish.
Aye.
Salzman.
Aye.
Hales.
Aye. All right, now we're ready to move to our first time certain item, which is item 1298.
Item 1298, require disclosure of energy performance ratings for residential, single-family buildings when listed for sale to promote transparency in housing costs and reduction in local carbon emissions.
Good morning. So I'll make some opening comments to set up this discussion, and we obviously have representatives from our bureau here to walk us through this proposal. Just some context, over the last few weeks, we've heard testimony in this chamber about the environment and about climate change and about the need to take local action. And of course, we've just considered and adopted amendments to our fossil fuel terminal policy that will go into our zoning code if the council approves that, as I hope and expect that we will. Hope and expect that we will in 2 weeks. The proposal here before us today is related to that because we have a climate action plan. To put it a little bit lightly, it's not a climate think about it plan. It's not a climate talk about it plan. It's a climate action plan. And I was privileged to vote on the first version of it in 1993 when I was a newly elected city commissioner. And we've been working on those issues for even longer than that, as I think we'll hear from some folks here today. If we're going to get serious about the climate, we have to take local action, and local action is more important than ever. Home energy scores have been a high priority item in that climate action plan since 2009. This is, in effect, low-hanging fruit for us as a city. What can we do in that long list of actions that need to be taken in cities like Portland? Well, energy efficiency is the highest return on investment of all those different action items that we have pledged ourselves to. Home energy scores are a tool that allows local governments and home buyers to have information at their disposal to know what the energy efficiency of a critical purchase actually is. They help consumers understand the full cost of owning a home. The policy will lead to additional investments in energy efficiency projects that will create jobs, reduce carbon emissions, and reduce energy costs for home buyers. A win-win-win. Again, as I said earlier, local action on climate is more important than ever. Portland is one of the C40 cities worldwide that have pledged to climate action, and the West Coast Alliance of Mayors will again meet next month to talk about what can we do at the city level to actually make a difference when we're not sure what the federal government is going to do at their level. So I appreciate the good work that's been done on this plan for many years by the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability. We have our Bureau Director and staff here to talk us through the issues in front of us, including the amendments. Maybe I should introduce the amendments first and then turn it over to you for the presentation. So we have some amendments in front of us. Amendment number 1 amends the ordinance and addresses alternative pathways to exemption or deferral for low-income sellers. It says the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability will develop solutions to cover the upfront costs of policy compliance for homeowners who qualify for exemptions or low-income seller deferral. Amendment 2 amends the code and gives the Director of the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability the ability to suspend the policy, saying the Director may temporarily suspend or modify the requirements of this chapter based on a determination that such requirements are temporarily infeasible due to economic or technical circumstances. And amendment number 3 amends the ordinance and requires the Bureau to report on market readiness, saying this: no fewer than 2 months prior to the effective date of the City Code Chapter 17.108, the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability will report back to the City Council on the market readiness for policy implementation, including but not limited to the number of home energy assessors licensed, trained, and prepared to meet the market demand for the number of daily home listings on the real estate market. So again, Susan Anderson and her staff are here to describe the proposed policy. Then we're going to hear from some invited guests and then take public testimony. We're also later in the process going to hear from the City of Austin because they've implemented a similar policy. This is one case in which Portland is not first. We weren't first in bike share and we weren't first in this, but often we're a leader, and I appreciate your leadership. So Susan, please take it.
Just as a point of clarification, what is the effective date of this if it's passed?
The effective date will be
January 1st, 2018.
18, right? So
A
we have
whole year
full
from now.
Oh, so let me move the amendments and see if there's a second for those, to put those on the table, and then we'll take it away for presentation. And obviously, folks that are here to testify, if you have comments on the amendments as well as on the basic proposal itself, that's why we put those on the table at the beginning of a council session like this. Susan?
Thank you. Good morning, Mayor. Council, Susan Anderson, Director of the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability, and with me here today are Michael Armstrong and Andrea Jacob. I just want to make a few points before I hand it over to them. You'll all remember that last year you adopted a energy score requirement for commercial buildings, and now it's time to do the same for the residential sector. The idea for a home energy score was in the 2009 Climate Action Plan, and the idea behind it, meaning that we needed to work on residential weatherization in ways that only cities can, started with Mike Lindbergh, my boss, back in the early 90s. So this has been thought about for more than 20 years, and now with the real estate market as hot as it is now, we think it's time we really need to move on it. An energy score is just like a miles per gallon sticker on a new car or the nutrition label on the food that you buy at the store. And not only have we gotten used to these labels, we've really come to expect them and we rely on them. And that's because clear, credible information is worth something. It helps us to make good choices and to spend our money wisely. An energy score is also a bit like a walk score, and you've all heard about walk scores. It's the label so that people can understand and find walkable neighborhoods that have amenities like stores and shops and other things close by. But unlike a walk score, where if you like the house but you don't like the walk score, you can't go and pick up the house and move it to the neighborhood that has a better walk score. With an energy score, if you don't like it, you can do something about it. With the information you get from an energy score assessment, you can make simple improvements that will yield significant savings. As the mayor mentioned, some of us have been working on this for a long time, and I've been doing efforts around planning and sustainable urban development and climate change for 30 years now. And this is totally the kind of specific action that really only cities can take. In Oregon, unlike California or Washington, we can't do a more stringent energy code. So California, Washington, cities can actually set a more stringent energy code if they want to do that for new construction. And unlike Seattle or Los Angeles or Tacoma or Eugene, we don't own the electric utility, so we don't get to decide what's in the mix in terms of renewable sources in our electricity. So we can do this, though, and also, as the mayor said, we can't rely on the federal government right now to take action on climate change in a big way. So cities around the world know that they have to be the leaders. I also know that this isn't the flashiest project we've ever brought to you. It's not like a big solar project. It's not, electric vehicles, a new light rail line, a new cool bridge that's for transit and bikes only. But energy efficiency, even though it's kind of boring and it's kind of invisible and it's in the walls and it's, in the attic insulation, energy efficiency is the workhorse. It's the absolute cheapest way to cut our carbon footprint. And as the mayor also mentioned, with the fossil fuel export policy, we're limiting supply, and we're also making a big statement for Portland about fossil fuels. But we have to do more than just make big statements. We have to keep working on reducing demand, or we absolutely won't meet our goals. Finally, I think in 5 or 6 years, all of this, I'm convinced, will not be a big deal. Cities all over the world will have energy scores. Others are working on it right now. It'll just be the normal thing when you do an exchange in terms of buying a new home. But we're Portland, and we should be in a leadership position. It's why people move here. It's why people move their businesses here. Being a green, a smart, high-performance city is part of who we are. So I'm going to turn over to Michael and Andrea, and then we'll hear all the testimony, and we'll be available to answer questions.
Great,
Thanks.
thank you very much. Good morning.
All right. Mayor and Commissioners, I'm Michael Armstrong with the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability, and I think we're set with the slides up there.
Okay.
So as both the mayor and Susan noted, this is a kind of fundamental building block in the 2015 Climate Action Plan. And, if we need any reminder of the urgency of taking action on climate, just this weekend, The Economist reported on the latest temperature numbers, and that little red line at the top is the limit of temperature increase that the international community is striving to achieve under the Paris Agreement in order to keep the climate stable. We're eaten up all the breathing room we have, and so it's really hard to overstate how urgent action is. So reducing energy use in existing buildings is a really key building block of the Climate Action Plan. As Susan noted, we took action on the commercial sector last year with energy performance ratings. That's the red slice of the pie. The blue one, the next really big one, is residential. Commercial energy benchmarking was action 1A in the climate plan. What's in front of you today is 1B. This is the next big thing that the city can do to reduce emissions from buildings. A similar action was proposed in the 2009 Climate Action Plan, and at the time there was discussion about this is a great policy. We need to be prepared to make it easy for homeowners who want a better score to finance and or arrange with a contractor to reduce the energy use in their home. And so that's what led to the creation of Clean Energy Works. Became Clean Energy Works Oregon, and today is Inhabit, a nonprofit organization that exists specifically to connect access to financing, qualified contractors, get the work done in as easy a fashion as possible. We now have that infrastructure. There are good options for people who want to improve their score to do so. And so at the time, there was caution about moving forward until we have this. We now have it. They've helped improve the energy performance in about 5,000 houses since they were created. It's fantastic. We still have about 90,000 houses in Portland that have little to no insulation. So we've made progress. We have a long way to go. And it really does have consequences to household budgets. So here are 3 representative houses. These are not extreme examples. And so you can see the annual energy cost in 3 fairly typical houses can vary and easily by a factor of 2 to 1. So $1,000 a year on the low end, perhaps $2,000 on the high end. If you think about our housing stock, it lasts 50, 80, 100 years. That $1,000 difference a year, year after year after year, and it may not be the household that's living in it today, but some household is going to benefit from those improvements over time. So this really is something we need to anticipate, not just how it plays out today, but how it plays out over time. So this policy then is intended to help reveal the full cost of owning a home. It's intended to enable an apples-to-apples comparison, so very much like the miles per gallon rating. It helps people understand possible home improvements in advance of the purchase. And it also now can give a home buyer access to specialized mortgage products. FHA, Fannie and Freddie all have mortgage options that are specific to houses that have a home energy score. So they know whether there's an improvement that's needed, or perhaps it's a high-performing house, and therefore their energy bills are going to be lower, and that gets factored into the mortgage. So we really are in a different position, and lots of support in other organizations and institutions to make good use of policies like this. So I'm going to turn it over to Andrea to describe the mechanics of the policy, and then we'll keep moving.
Okay, thank you. Good morning.
Thank you, Michael. Good morning, Mayor Hales and Commissioners. I'm Andrea Jacob. I'm a manager of energy programs and policy at the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability. So what we're proposing today has two main parts. The first part is that sellers of single-family homes obtain a home energy report, and that includes three main things: the home energy score, which is a number on a scale of 1 to 10, an estimate of the total energy used in the home in a year, and then an estimate of the total cost of that energy. And that can be displayed as a monthly figure or as an annual figure. And we want to make clear that the home energy score that we're proposing, as you've heard, is more like a miles per gallon rating. That's called an asset rating. Utility bills tell you about the household and about the past occupant's behavior, but they do not tell you about the house. And it doesn't allow you to compare house to house on an apples to apples basis. So when you look at miles per gallon, you know actual mileage can vary, but you also get a pretty good idea of what you're getting. Asset ratings are considered best practice in the field, and they are based on a very brief physical inspection of the home. I want to also say that we've aligned very closely with the Oregon Department of Energy around state statute and existing rules on home energy scoring systems and practices. So the second piece is to disclose the information from this home energy report to the City of Portland and to prospective buyers who visit the home while it's on the market. The requirement would apply to sellers and to home builders in the case of newly constructed homes. And we're proposing that the time of disclosure be at or before the time of listing. So in your packets in front of you, you have a sample home energy report. I'm going to walk you through it quickly. We are proposing to use the U.S. Department of Energy's Home Energy Score. That's actually a brand. It's a software tool. This first page is the score sheet. That's the first part of the report. You can see it's a 10-point scale. The average home is a 5. This hypothetical home scored a 3. Its estimated energy costs are $1,600 per year. This particular report also shows you what the cost would be if the home were to move to a 7 to get a higher score. So this report's customizable. We could make it, we can tinker with it, we can make it look how we want, but the idea is that you're starting to see standardization on a very simple 10-point scale that allows that apples to apples comparison.
So would it list what changes are needed to get to a 7?
Excuse me?
Would it list what changes are needed to get to a 7?
And I'll get to that. It's the third tab of the report.
And is there any way to get to the 10 on that particular house?
Most homes do not score a 10. It's sort of the ultimate net zero type of home. So most homes score in the 5 to 7 range. So the second tab is really the home facts. This is just a rundown of the existing condition of your home. It'll review the square footage, levels of insulation in your floor, attic, and walls, your efficiency of your heating systems, how much window square footage you have, things like that. And then the third tab is really great. This is the recommendations tab, to get to your question, Commissioner Fritz. This is a list. It's basically the roadmap for the seller or the buyer to get to that higher score. And the recommendations are prioritized in order of cost effectiveness. In other words, what are the things you should do first that will save you the most energy for the lowest cost? So moving on to exemptions. Best practice would suggest that home energy scoring policies really limit the number of exemptions that we have, but as a result of stakeholder engagement and public comment, it became clear that some exemptions were going to be necessary. I also want to point out that this policy is triggered when a home is put on the market for sale. So if a home is not hitting the market, if it's going from a family member to a family member, it's not covered and the policy doesn't get triggered. But for those homes that are going on the market, we did exempt those transactions that were legally or financially complicated. And there's a list here, homes that are in foreclosure or short sales or auction, receivership. A full list of the exemptions is on page 5 of Exhibit A. That's the code language. The proposal also gives the director of the Bureau discretion to exempt sellers for other reasons other than these. Also, go ahead.
I know there was an amendment just proffered that deals with low income.
Yes.
So what about low income sellers?
I'm going to get right to that. This is the next slide. It's a good question. So also in response to public comment about equity concerns and potential harm to vulnerable residents, we have proposed this low-income seller deferral. So the circumstances that would trigger that are listed, so income at or below 60% of median household, participation in the program we call LIHEAP, it's the Low Income Home Energy Assistance Program, participation in free and reduced price meals. We also give the director discretion to give a deferral for other reasons. In this case, the requirement would transfer to the buyer, who would have to comply within 4 months. So the amendment deals with this notion that if you get an exemption or a deferral and the score is not then publicly available, like every other home that is going through as complying with the policy, that might allow lenders to do some predatory lending practices against those homes. It might signal that these are homes that are in some kind of difficulty. So the amendment is to direct the Bureau to come up with ways to cover the upfront cost so that everybody can get a score. We'd rather have everybody have a score than have exemptions and deferrals, but we want to create different pathways. So you can get an exemption or deferral, or we're going to try to figure out a way with our partners to cover the cost, which you'll hear is not a significant cost to obtain the score.
And then what if the buyer is low income?
Then they will have the same options we've written the code so that they could take advantage of one of the exemptions as well, or a deferral.
If the point is to help buyers compare between one house and another, what on earth is the point of having it after they've already moved in?
This would be at time of listing, so the score goes into the listing as it goes onto the market, not after they've moved in.
Right.
Oh, but if the buyer, what we know about buyers is that they are very motivated, and that within that first few months they're in the home, they make a lot of changes to the home, and they'll have the report and they'll have the roadmap, and the idea is that they could still go ahead and make those upgrades based on the information from the score. It's not ideal, but it's a way of at least providing that information to those folks, and we don't expect there to be that many of these cases.
And this is in effect your backup plan
Correct.
for what you actually prefer, which is get some foundation or third party or whoever to fund the cost for low-income buyers up front, so they get the same information for low-income sellers up front.
Right, I think in that case we should take out the bit. I think that's what we need to figure out, is how to get it up front.
Right.
Because adding a burden to the buyer when they might be, busy doing whatever else they're doing to move into the house, it doesn't seem to make the point to me.
Agreed. Okay.
Just one other question. What if it's highly likely that the home is going to be demolished? There wouldn't seem to be much point in having an energy score if we know that they're going to be more homes or new homes on the lot.
Yeah, we've thought about that, and we know some houses will get sold and then demolished, but we don't think there's value in creating some kind of exemption, and often the seller doesn't know what the buyer is going to do with the house, and they don't know who's going to buy it. And so because the seller will already have gotten the score, we don't have a way to anticipate what will end up happening to the house, because it depends on who buys it.
Maybe we could have a rebate by the demolisher. You have to pay for the seller back. It's not a big disincentive, but at least it would be something there, right?
And just one final point on the deferral and the exemption. We are just asking folks to submit notification. There's no requirement that they wait for an answer from the city before they list the home. They can continue with the transaction, so this should not delay the transaction. So a little bit about our public process and how we got here today. Mayor Hales asked us to start investigating this very late last year, around December of 2015. So we kicked off 2016 with a research and scoping phase. Kyle Diesner, who's the policy analyst, is in the audience, and he did the lion's share, the majority of all of this work. And we spoke to a lot of other cities. So we looked at energy disclosure policies in Austin, Boulder, Berkeley, Santa Fe, Denver, Chicago, New York, Seattle, DC. There's a longer list. Just to let you know that there are other cities doing this, other states doing this in different iterations, different formats, but we talked to all of them. We looked at energy efficiency best practices. There is research on this, and looked at data and gathering market trends. And then the public stakeholder engagement process kicked off in May. And we started with 2 professionally run consumer focus groups. We were behind the glass. These were people who had recently been in the real estate market or were planning to be in the real estate market. We segmented the group by home value, the value of the homes that they were purchasing. So a lower home value group and a higher home value group. Very fascinating discussion. But for when everybody put their buyer hat on, almost unanimously, the focus groups were very in favor. Some of the concerns we've addressed were a lot about fairness and equity, and so we've tried to address those in the policy design. We also had 2 facilitated discussions with industry in late May that included the real estate community, the energy efficiency community, lenders, people in the associated fields with real estate. We did have an equity stakeholder group, and that was with community-based organizations representing low-income communities, tenants, communities of color, the Housing Bureau, Multnomah County, and others. We did do individual meetings. We did go and meet with the Portland Metro Association of Realtors at their place of business. We met with others on a one-on-one basis, and that led up to the release of a public comment draft in September. We had a public comment period for several weeks. We got about 800 comments. Close to 600 of those were from realtors. We then took more, we released a public code language draft in October, took more public comment, and then filed in early November with what you see in front of you. Just to summarize a little bit quickly around the main themes of public comment, as I mentioned earlier, there were a lot of concerns about equity. How does this policy affect low-income and vulnerable people like elders on fixed incomes? The Bureau definitely shared that concern, and I think you're seeing that in the policy design with the low-income deferral, with the exemptions, with the amendment. We want to make sure this doesn't have negative impacts. We also pushed pause on the rental market. It was our initial idea to have this be applied to single-family rental homes, but we heard clearly from those equity stakeholders that now is not the right time for that, so we pulled that. A closely related concern was housing affordability, this fear that this policy would exert upward pressure on housing costs. So just a couple quick thoughts on that. This is information policy. We are not requiring upgrades at this time. People are paying these energy costs whether or not we shine a light on them, so those costs exist. The cost to obtain the score is about $200. It's within reach for most of the people transacting in the market at this time. But the most important point is that energy efficiency is our most cost-effective long-term housing affordability strategy that we have. Energy efficiency lowers the operating cost of a home over the life of the home, and as Michael showed you, can save thousands of dollars for homeowners or renters should it come to that part of the market. We heard a strong preference among realtors for voluntary market, for incentives. We don't need mandatory. I just want to note that we have been in a voluntary market environment since 2007, 8, 9. The state started looking at this. Less than 2% of homes in Portland have gotten a score in that time. So we just need to substantially accelerate the good activity that's already happened. And then lastly, we did have support in the public comment, quite a bit of it, and in the focus groups, and in the unscientific Portland Business Journal poll that showed 67% of people supported this, but the consumer protection and climate protection benefits are recognized by most people that we've talked to about this. So people understand the value of knowing what the full cost of owning a home is. And I'll just sum up 2 comments from our focus group participants, which I thought were very insightful. One gentleman said, yes, this has to be mandatory. I would never do this if it were voluntary, but I would happily do it if it were mandatory. And the second person said, this policy really helps you see inside the walls. And as Susan said, we label, rate, and score everything that we consume, from food to movies to appliances to cars, but we just don't have anything for homes, and this fills that gap. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions?
Mayor, I have 3. Thank you for an excellent presentation. So the disclosure to the city, what will we do with the data when we get it? How will we track outcomes? And is there a budget ask associated with that?
I'll take the last one. There's no budget ask related to this. So we have this as part of our existing budget as a priority.
So
Does that include covering the upfront cost for low-income homeowners?
The low-income one, well, mostly you're going to have to rely on me and how I've done in the past 15 years at raising money from foundations and others to be able to pay for this. I think it's a really fundable, investment, and I think that we have a lot of partners who will want to be a part of this. But obviously, we'll have that in place before this goes live a year from now.
So I guess thank you. And the other two pieces are the disclosures made to the city, what do we do with it, and how do we track outcomes?
The first piece is we would like to put this on Portland Maps where we house similar information like permit information, permit data. So we think that's a good place for it. We do have an evaluation plan, and the ordinance does direct us to come back in 30 months and report on rates of compliance, uptake in energy efficiency, a range of other outcomes.
Second question, Amendment 3 says, Susan, you could come back to us to talk to us about market readiness and other conditions. We had a conversation last year about TNCs, and they have a pricing policy that says at certain times they raise their prices due to market conditions. So we're saying it's roughly $200 an audit, but we're also making a market, and we're not quite sure how that's going to work. So how do we ensure that the $200 doesn't become $500 in the implementation phase?
I'll let these guys answer, but I do know that in Austin, it's about the market is settled out, and it's about $125 to $150. So it actually went the other direction because it when you create a new demand, you create a new marketplace for a lot of people to enter into that space, and that caused some competition, and the price is now like around $125, $150.
So I think you'll hear testimony from some folks in the audience who are in the industry where even today, without the policy, there is the capacity and the number of qualified home energy assessors to do the work. You'll also notice Amendment 2 gives the Director of BPS the authority to temporarily suspend the rules. So if we learn that prices have spiked, we have the ability, or Susan has the ability to suspend those rules. So we're trying to protect against that, even though even today, we understand that there is plenty of capacity in the market to meet the demand.
Should we be considering a requirement that the market participants disclose to you annually what their fees and charges are? So you can track that rather than getting it anecdotally?
I would say that might be interesting to hear from some of the other testifiers about.
And the third thing has to do with Amendment 1. And I appreciate the work you've done already to exempt classes of people, and I appreciate the work you're doing on waivers and deferrals. The thing that I've learned with the utilities, because we have a bunch of programs that offer discounts, waivers and the like, is that in order for these to work, they have to be as simple as possible. And so what I want to put a plug in for as you develop these options, please don't come up with a system that requires someone to certify, produce tax returns, go through all this stuff. Instead, let's piggyback off of the existing programs, and that's sort of the flavor that you've already done. And so that if someone's already eligible for a program, a precondition of which is their low income, let's piggyback off of that and figure out the fraud issues later. Let's not have someone have to reapply, because the more paperwork at the front end, the less likely that people will be able to take advantage of those things. And I think I made a list, which I'll share with you later, of what are other existing programs that low-income homeowners might be eligible for. So I'd hope we can get as robust a list as possible, and if someone checks a box and they have some reasonable basis for it and they sign a document, that will be deemed sufficient rather than some kind of certification process. Because that will discourage people from taking advantage of it. So thank you.
Other questions?
Yeah, I'm a little hung up on this requirement when a low-income seller sells to another person, that person within 4 months must complete a home energy audit. I mean, I just don't know how you possibly enforce that. Are we talking about putting a lien on a home as a result of that? So how is it enforceable, and what is the wisdom behind it? I guess it's not leaping out at me.
Well, the wisdom is mostly around.
Well, talk about enforcement first.
Okay,
What's the consequences to the buyer that does not complete a home energy audit within 4 months of purchasing a home?
So we're not going to place a lien on anyone's house because they didn't get a home energy score, but we will, the buyer will need to submit to the city the home energy score, much as the seller would have done had the seller done so. And so we will be able to look at the list of, we'll know who submitted a score, we'll know which houses transacted, and then we'll know which houses, didn't have a score before they listed, transacted, and then we'll know to follow up with them. And so it will be, typical of city compliance. We'll notify them. Often people don't know or sort of choose not to know. And then we will proceed to sort of escalate that you do need to do this. And so it mirrors a lot of the other enforcement that the city does. But we will have there'll be a process of being able to check who did and
Who's
didn't.
doing the actual enforcement?
BPS will, Bureau of Planning and Sustainability. And that's part of the program that we need to build in order to make this as easy as possible for everyone to work within.
So a couple follow-ups perhaps to that might be helpful, both to Commissioner Salzman and the rest of us. That is, you have done a bunch of research on what other cities have done. It might be useful for us, not now verbally, but in writing maybe, how have other cities handled this issue? And then what has been the enforcement bandwidth or the scale of the problem with respect to the commercial energy benchmarking that we're already doing? Because that might be a precedent for, how often is this going to happen?
Right, I think the enforcement on this one, I mean, it's a little bit of money and the average price of a house right now is, heading towards $400,000. In the transaction of, $200 for doing this is small. And I understand it may not be small to someone who is low income at the time of sale. But so in terms of actually enforcing it, this is going to rely on a great partnership with the realty community over time. And it's not going to happen unless the real estate agents, of course, just like other things that they have to do on those 94 pages that you sign when you buy a new house or a house. And so my hope is that just like we have other kinds of enforcement issues, that we have partners with all of the construction industry currently, and with building codes. We don't go out and check every single thing they do. We couldn't do that. It wouldn't be cost effective. It's going to rely on us building a great partnership with the real estate community over time to understand that this is something that's the rule here in Portland.
So just to reiterate what Michael said, there's no envisioning liens on people's homes under this, none whatsoever. Okay.
Other questions? Thank you very much. I know we'll probably need you back up for more questions at the end of the hearing. So we're going to open the public hearing, and we have some invited testimony first, and then we'll move into folks on the sign-up sheet. First, I believe we have Senator Michael Dembro and former Senator Jackie Dingfelder here. We'll extend the courtesy to the elected officials and former elected officials in the room. Welcome. And I don't know if there are any others, but I think these two are here. They are here. Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning. Welcome back.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Mayor and council members. My name is Jackie Dingfelder. I'm former state senator, former policy director for the mayor, and I live in Northeast Portland. And I want to thank you all for holding the hearing today on this very important proposal before us. As Susan said, it's truer than ever that the fight against climate change will be won or lost in states and cities, as we all know. And with this proposal, you have the opportunity to take a critical step forward on climate change while enabling home buyers in Portland to make better decisions for their pocketbooks. At the state, I helped pass legislation that established a state certification for people trained to provide home energy scores. Stakeholders from across the state now agree on which rating system to use. All the pieces are now in place to move forward to make home energy scores standard practice. Unfortunately, we've seen that voluntary efforts aren't enough, as you've heard from BPS staff. You may be hearing from realtors today who want you to take a go slow approach. They say they support the city's climate and affordability goals, but oppose a requirement. I have good friends who are realtors, we all do, and know that they are sincere, but we simply can't afford to delay. And by the way, this is the exact same argument I heard several years ago when I proposed the same bill in the state legislature. So more than ever, home buyers need to understand the full cost of owning a home, including the energy costs. Let me share with you a recent example that made me think even more about why this is needed. Unfortunately, my trusty Subaru of 16 years is starting to wear down, and I started looking for a new car, and I thought, okay, there's been a huge amount of improvements on energy efficiency. We have new hybrids. So I started looking at new cars and, of course, comparing the fuel efficiency. And it occurred to me that one of the biggest choices in our life is buying a home. I know it was for me, lived in the same home for 23 years, but it's a huge investment for all of us. But it is one of the least informed choices that we make around energy. And you think about the amount of energy that you are going to use over the lifetime of a house, yet we don't really have good metrics or a way to compare when we're looking at different homes. And so when I was out car shopping, it made me think a lot about how we have this great requirement that car sellers have to disclose fuel efficiency, yet we don't have that type of opportunity for people to make informed choices when they're buying a home. And we all know that energy costs are a huge part of our monthly costs to run our home and make sure that we have a warm and safe environment. So we do need to make sure that this proposal can work for low-income sellers. I know that you're working out the details on that. And so I would encourage you to make sure that obviously low-income sellers have the same opportunities and low-income buyers to make that comparison. I know that Susan Anderson and her team are very concerned about equity and will work very closely with the council to address those concerns. In closing, I just want to mention I spent much of the past year working and living in New Zealand and had the benefit of a global perspective on climate change. New Zealand takes climate change very seriously as well. You probably know they're an island nation, and issues around sea level rise are something that they thought about every day. People look at the U.S. and they're very worried about where we're headed. But they also look at cities like Portland and they see, real promise. Wherever I went in New Zealand, people asked me where I was from. They said, City of Portland. Oh, we look to Portland as a model here in New Zealand and many of our cities. Certainly, I think that's true throughout the world. So more than ever, we need Portland to lead, and this is an important opportunity to do so with a practical and a reasonable approach that helps Portland families and reduces carbon at the same time. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll hand it over to my esteemed colleague.
Good morning.
Thank you, Senator. Mayor Hales, Commissioners, I'm Michael Dembro. I represent Senate District 23, that's Northeast, Southeast Portland, in the Oregon Senate, where I also sit on the Energy and Environment Committee. And I'm here primarily to address the potential charge that a program like this really should be a state program as opposed to being dealt with at the local level. I believe that it absolutely needs to be addressed at the local level. And to sort of give some background to that, you need to know that the day after the election, a couple of weeks ago, I had the dubious pleasure of flying to Washington, D.C. to be part of a conference on energy policy and climate change. That this was, it's a cohort of legislators from around the country, bipartisan. It's an institute called the Lehigh Institute, the Legislative Energy Horizons Institute, sponsored by a combination of funders from the fossil fuel industries, from renewable fuels, from different policy think tanks. And it was, I have to say, the day after the election, it was both sobering, but also, I think ultimately very, very realistic. And the theme that really came through day after day was that the action on climate change really is going to, the action on climate action has been and will continue to be primarily at the local level, whether we're talking about the states or we're talking about cities. And that will be true even more so likely under the new administration. And the other message that came through very clearly was the importance of energy efficiency, and that in order to reach our climate goals, states, cities, the country as a whole really needs to double down on energy efficiency. There's been a lot of work that's been done in different states and different locales around the country. A lot of low-hanging fruit has been picked, and progress has been made, but there is much, much more to be done. And we heard that probably the strongest voice for that was the representative from BP Oil, who was talking to us about the importance of energy efficiency as part of their growing portfolio. And what we also heard, there was, of course, with legislators there from around the country, we all were sort of elbowing as to who's doing good work in what area and what areas. And we did learn that Oregon as a whole has slipped in the last year or so in terms of its energy efficiency, its standing among the states with respect to energy efficiency. So it really is important that we heard specifically about the need to focus on innovative programs like residential scorecards. That was something that was mentioned. Again, in a very nonpartisan kind of way, that this is the cutting edge of where we need to be going in terms of energy efficiency. So, I really encourage you to pursue this. Just looking at the turnout here, obviously this is a local issue, and having this addressed at the local level allows people on all sides of this issue with concerns and suggestions to come together in a very easy way that really could not happen at the state level. Just as with respect to the country as a whole, we see the states as the laboratories of change, where the states can try things out and become models for one another. So the cities serve that same function with respect to the states. We heard about Austin and what a model Austin has been. If that had been left up to the state of Texas, clearly, we would not, Texas is not going to be a laboratory on this issue. But Austin can be, and it can provide us with useful information and models, just as this city will for Salem, for Corvallis, for Eugene, for Redmond, for Bend, for other cities in this state. So I encourage you to move forward in pursuing this program.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you both.
Thank
Appreciate you being here. So we have a few other pieces of invited testimony. Chris Smith is here representing our Planning and Sustainability Commission, our volunteers who help us make policy. Thank you very much. And then we have a video presentation from the U.S. Department of Energy. So, Chris, welcome. Good morning.
Mayor, members of council, thank you. I'm Chris Smith, Vice Chair of the Planning and Sustainability Commission, here to convey the Commission's support for this program. We reviewed this under the sustainability part of our name, and as such, this was not a formal legislative project for us, so we did not hold a public hearing. We did, however, receive unsolicited input from both sides of the issue. As you can see in the room, there's a lot of passion on both sides, and they were happy to help inform our deliberations. Some of the issues that we discussed in our review included the provisions for low-income homeowners, and I think we were largely satisfied that the program has tools to help them. We had discussion of whether a voluntary program or other ways of measuring this, like disclosing energy bills, would be a sufficient alternative. I think you've heard in the staff presentation why this is a better option than those. And I guess I'd leave you with 2 points. One is that we are the custodians of the Climate Action Plan, and this is one of many steps that are going to be required in that plan to get to our climate objectives. So we think this is a necessary step along the way. And finally, I'd comment on the evolving understanding of affordability. It's been during my tenure helping with public policy in the city that we've come to understand that you can't look at isolated factors of affordability. So, for example, you have to look at both the mortgage cost and the transportation costs to really understand the affordability of a home. And I think this is the further evolution that we have to include the energy operating costs in our understanding of affordability. So I think this will help both in the policymaking context and for individual consumers to really understand the affordability of their homes. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. So we do have a video testimony from Joan Glickman from the U.S. Department of Energy, and I think Michael's got that set up for us. Ready. She's ready to repeat it if we need her to. Thank you very much. Our final two invited speakers are Michael Colgrove from Energy Trust of Oregon and Charity Fain from Community Energy Project. So come on up if you're here, and then we'll move into the sign-up sheet after that. Welcome.
Say somebody from Austin is here too?
We had some later, but I think we'll hear testimony first. Not here in person, just videos. Good morning. Welcome.
Morning. So good morning, Mayor Hales, Commissioners. Thank you for the invitation to join you this morning to share Energy Trust of Oregon's experience with home energy scoring. For the record, my name is Mike Colgrove, and I'm the Executive Director of Energy Trust, an independent nonprofit whose sole purpose is to help the 1.5 million customers of Portland General Electric, Pacific Power, Northwest Natural, and Cascade Natural Gas save and generate clean, inexpensive energy. Pursuant to our grant agreement with the Oregon Public Utility Commission, Energy Trust does not support or oppose ballot measures, candidates, or matters before the City Council. I am here this morning to provide information on our experience with home energy scoring and not to advocate for a specific outcome related to this proposed ordinance. At its essence, home energy scoring is a way to increase the transparency regarding a new or existing home's energy use. We have found scoring to be an effective strategy for increasing the number of homes built at least 10% above code, and in the case of existing homes, identifying opportunities for energy upgrades. Energy Trust first began considering home energy scoring in 2007. Since then, we have conducted several pilots and evaluations and issued energy scores for 10,000 new homes and 2,000 existing homes. We have learned how the market responds to these scores and determined that they are effective indicators of how well or poorly a home uses energy. Providing our customers with information and knowledge is a key component of many of our energy conservation programs. Home energy scoring provides homeowners or buyers with a transparent indication of a home's energy usage to help inform decision-making about what is one of the largest purchases of most people's lives. In the absence of a national federal home labeling policy, ordinance such as the one before you today and programs such as those Energy Trust of Oregon implements may be the only tools available to move housing stocks into a more energy efficient, lower carbon future. Should the City of Portland choose to adopt the home energy score ordinance, Energy Trust stands ready to help homeowners and home builders comply, much as we did when the city passed the Commercial Energy Performance Reporting Policy last year. We have also helped to build market capacity by supporting education and training opportunities for the people who will carry out these assessments and implementing energy-efficient upgrades. While we believe there is currently sufficient capacity to service the existing market, we could support additional training to accommodate any increased demand which the ordinance might generate. I'd be happy to respond to any questions now or to provide supporting documentation upon request.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Good morning.
Good morning. Mayor Hills and Commissioners, thank you so much for the opportunity to testify. My name is Charity Fain, and I'm the Executive Director of the Community Energy Project. We at CEP believe that everyone deserves a safe, healthy, and efficient home regardless of income. We help vulnerable and underserved Portlanders weatherize their homes, make critical safety repairs, and we teach people how to do this themselves. Last year, nearly 2/3 of our clients identified as people of color, and all of our clients were low income. CEP strongly supports the proposed Home Energy Score program. For lower income home buyers, knowing the potential heating and cooling costs is essential when considering whether a mortgage will be affordable. And while the price of homes increasingly becomes unaffordable to many, making this information public is of particular value to low-income buyers. The energy audits required by the program will provide home buyers with a list of suggested upgrades to improve efficiency and reduce utility costs. And for home buyers like our clients, this information will help them to prioritize projects, and it is also an immense value to them. Some of our clients might also be sellers, and as we've discussed, may not have the resources to pay for the required audits. CEP participated in the equity stakeholder meetings with the city and expressed those concerns with them. We feel that they listened to us and incorporated the exemption process into the proposed program. We believe the provisions are sufficient to alleviate potential burdens on lower income home sellers. Finally, like many others, I really want to address climate change. At this time, it's absolutely critical that we move forward with Portland's climate action plan. The proposed program, as we know, will provide home buyers and sellers with the information they need to prioritize efficiency upgrades. But I think what's even more important to consider is that while we will all benefit as Portland homes become more efficient, we won't all be equally impacted by climate change. CEP's clients and vulnerable people everywhere will bear a disproportionate burden to climate change, and we need to think about this and develop programs to address it. On behalf of CEP and our clients, I ask you to support the Home Energy Score program.
Thank you.
I
Questions?
have a question for either or both. One of the things I've learned as a consumer is that from time to time, reputable agencies that do things like scores get it wrong. And the best example is a credit score. And it required congressional intervention to then get to the point where we have a right to see our credit scores and we get to have some relief. And when it turns out that there's something on our credit score that is an unrelated charge or problem, or they've mixed and matched, there's a remedy for getting that cleaned up and have your score fixed. If a homeowner disagrees with a home energy score or report, what is the recourse for that homeowner? And I'll give you an example. I could imagine a situation where there's two reports that have been generated, a home energy score and a report that has home facts, and a standard home inspection that's usually done by the buyer. What happens if you can't reconcile the two, and it turns out that there's a mistake on one or both? How does that get fixed, and where's the recourse?
You might be better at this.
Sure. So I don't want to speak for the staff of the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability, but it's my understanding that any types of discrepancies like that can be taken to the director for resolution. I will say that the Energy Trust plays a role in the quality control aspect of the types of organizations and companies that perform these ratings. So we do have a level or an obligation there to ensure that the folks, at least working through Energy Trust, maintain certain levels of quality control, and conflict resolution. But I would think the specific resolution or conflict would be brought to the Department or Division of BPS.
So my guess is that when you said that it would go to Susan to be adjudicated, she was breaking out in hives. So let's assume Susan,
We're maybe not the best people to
because
Yeah, it might not be the
think
right
anyone
person.
would view that as a satisfactory process. So someone gets their score and it says it has roof, attic 1, some description, and they're like, well, that's funny, I live in a bungalow that has no attic. So somehow this got grafted on, this isn't my house, or it says that windows have failed and you just replace them. A million things can happen, and the only reason I know this is because all of us have spent time cleaning up our credit scores, which, by the way, is an important score for lots of reasons, only to find out that there's misinformation on it. So because this is a fluid situation and you're going to want to reconcile any discrepancies quickly, what is the official appeal process within your agency to have that resolved?
Within our agency, so if the homeowner is applying to Energy Trust for incentives or anything on the types of improvements they might be doing, or working with a specific contractor that's providing the report, and they have an issue and we're involved in that in some way, we have a very formal conflict. We have a hotline you can call if you have an issue with any of our contractors. You can bring that forward. We review all of those complaints on a regular basis to help ensure, and then reach back out and for resolution. Now, if we are, like I said, if the project is going to improvement, where actual measures are being installed, we are involved on the ground, working with doing inspections and follow-up.
I'd like to also add that we provide, I think something that can help is education around what that score is and what you might expect in an audit. I went through one. It can be very confusing even when you know something about the industry. And people can come and get some free education on what do you look for? How do you better understand what your information that's going to be provided to you? And we as an organization provide those free trainings for anyone in the community. So, sometimes it's understanding what you're getting. It might not be a mistake in the audit. You might just not totally understand the audit.
Yeah.
So looking for those resources that already exist in the community to understand. And I can also just speak from, as a homeowner, when you're working with whatever contractor that's coming in, they are really responsive. And, that they can go over it with you and help you. Having that information in advance so that you really understand kind of the technical language makes a huge impact on what you understand in that audit. And those resources, like I said, exist already. But as to what the official policy is, I'm a community rep, so I don't know.
Well, I appreciate your answers, and I think later on when the team comes back, we'll talk about, this is a pro-consumer measure, obviously. And I also want to just make sure that the consumer has recourse if someone along the chain gets it wrong. That's all. And so it's not another hoop without a remedy.
Absolutely.
Legitimate question. Good, thank you. Other questions? Thank you both very much. Appreciate you being here and appreciate you being resources for this work. We are ready to move to the sign-up sheet. We always extend the courtesy to students and people with disabilities. So if you fit that description, feel free to come up early. I know there's some students here. And then we'll move into the rest of the list. And we'll take Mr. Kelly early on because he has a semi-official capacity here today. So come on up. Good morning. Who'd like to go first?
I guess I will.
Okay, good morning.
Good morning. I'm Ella Schreiner, and I'm a freshman at Grant High School. I've spoken to you before because I am deeply concerned about my future and the world that all of today's youth will inherit. It is clear that climate change is the greatest threat to our future. Because of that, it is essential that we not only limit fossil fuel development, but that we also take strong, direct action to reduce our carbon emissions. Portland has long been an environmental leader, and it is critically important that we continue to take aggressive steps to meet the city's Climate Action Plan goal of an 80% reduction in emissions by 2050. I come from a family that reads nutrition labels on packaged foods and pays attention to fuel efficiency information for cars. As consumers, knowledge allows us to make informed choices, and I believe that requiring home energy scores will be a catalyst for both sellers and buyers to make energy-saving improvements to their homes. I live in an older home constructed with a single-pane windows and very little insulation. Over the years, we have replaced windows, added insulation, and upgraded to a high-efficiency furnace. It would have been very useful for my parents to have known from the start which energy upgrades would have the greatest impact on our energy bills and comfort. We will soon have new neighbors in the house next door. In the process of purchasing their home, our neighbors-to-be arranged for a complete home inspection. Checks were made to determine if the old oil tank had been properly decommissioned, whether there were problems with the sewer line, if the roof was sound, and whether the old electrical wiring posed a threat. Obtaining information about a prospective home is taken for granted in today's house sales, and it makes perfect sense that home buyers should also learn about the energy efficiency of a prospective home. I have heard concerns that this proposal would place a financial burden on sellers and that we should move slowly to make changes. However, requiring a home energy score for home sales does not present a significant financial burden for most sellers, and it would promote jobs, green jobs, locally. Portland already has requirements for energy performance disclosure for commercial buildings, and it is time to turn our attention to residential properties. I hope that you still have the environmental awards my classmates and I gave you at last year's fossil fuel infrastructure hearing, because Portland youth need you to continue to act as champions for our Earth. I urge you all to vote yes on this proposed ordinance. I believe it is good for homeowners and important for our future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good morning. Yes, we make that exception. No matter whether we agree with them or not, when students come here, we want to say thank you for already being leaders in our community.
And yes, you can certainly go in my office. It's proudly displayed. Thank you.
Welcome. Good morning.
Hello, my name is Olivia Magritte, and I am an 8th grader at Sunnyside Environmental School. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak with you today. As you know, climate change is transforming all life on Earth, and it has already had observable effects on our environment. Glaciers have shrunk, trees are flowering sooner, and plant and animal ranges have shifted. Without action, the impacts of climate change threatens to catastrophically damage our planet. Because of this, we must work to contain and then to reduce our output of greenhouse gas emissions. My family regularly consults miles per gallon ratings on cars we might buy, energy guide labels on appliances, and nutrition labels on food. They have taught me that this knowledge helps us as consumers make informed decisions. This being said, consumer labeling on homes is rarely available in most real estate markets. Less than 2% of Portland's 160,000 single-family homes have an energy score. This lack of information just doesn't make sense to me, especially when we know that we cannot achieve our 2015 Climate Action Plan goal to reduce emissions by 80% by 2050 unless we majorly increase our energy efficiency and participation in renewable energy activities in the residential category. These energy upgrades benefit sellers and buyers while at the same time reduces carbon pollution. Beyond lowering energy bills and greater housing affordability, energy-efficient homes are more comfortable and livable and at time of sale sell for higher. As a youth of today, I am worried about my future in the world that my generation will inherit. What you decide will not only affect America or the city of Portland, but it will affect the entire world. Portland has an incredible opportunity to continue taking action as an environmental leader and set an example for surrounding communities. I urge you to vote yes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well done. Thank you. Morning.
Good morning. My name is Joe Walsh. I represent Individuals for Justice. We support this measure. We are very aware that come January, you will be on your own. You have to do this kind of stuff on the local level because you're going to get no support from the federal level, none. The present administration doesn't even believe in climate change, thinks it's a Chinese conspiracy. You have to do this kind of stuff. You have to look at it and you have to be a little careful. We're a little concerned that the homeowners apparently are going to pick up the bill on this. Why doesn't the utility people get involved in some of the payments? They're going to make a lot of money. I just looked at my electric bill in a one-bedroom apartment. It was $100. Now, we do have some unusual things. I have an oxygen that goes 24/7, so maybe that's part of it. But I was kind of stunned at that. And it went up about $20 from last month. So the oxygen is not one of the problems because it's been there for 8 years. Again, let me congratulate you. We are so worried that the young people are not going to become activists. And you just make me smile, both of you. And I know I fight with you guys on the council, but this is something that we can agree on. You have to do it on a local level. You have to figure out a way, even if it may be illegal and the state will get angry with you, do it anyway. You got 40 lawyers, you know? You got 10 paralegals. Do it anyway and say, come and get us. Because we're on the side of the angels on this one. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Other students and anyone else wants to take that courtesy, come on up. Thank you. Good morning.
Hi.
Welcome.
My name is Emma Swanson, and I'm a senior at Wilson High School. My mom has always advocated for the environment, and all my life, she and my dad have told me to turn off the lights, take shorter showers, don't blast the heat. In my environmental science class, we discussed the importance of small actions, the 1,000 small actions that people can take to make things better in our community and have an impact on climate change. I read the home energy score policy, and it seems like a good incentive for people to make their homes more energy efficient. That's a really good thing. This recent election has left me feeling a little helpless, like I don't have a voice. I'm only 17, and I can't do anything to make a change is not the mindset that I want to become familiar with. I want to have a voice, I want to be informed about important policies, and I want other people to have a voice as well. This policy is an example of where it is really important where people have the best information about their homes. I know that I would want to know, and as a voice in my local community, I think it's important for consumers to have accurate, transparent, and consistent information about the homes that they're buying and living in. I am the voice of a millennial, and you guys are making the decisions that are going to impact my future and the future of my peers. This energy scoring policy is something that I value, and I think is an important step forward in creating a sustainable environment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Amalia Silverhart. I'm 16 years old. I'm a junior in high school. And as has already been said much more eloquently than I can, it's imperative that we take action on climate change and reduce Portland's emissions. I think that this proposal is an excellent way of doing that, in part because it will raise awareness for this. People who wouldn't necessarily be thinking about the effect that their home, that their daily lives have on the climate and the environment will be given the information to do so. And I wanted to remind you that I'm young. It is very likely that I will outlive all of you. And I will suffer the effects of climate change in ways that you never will, that you can't imagine, and so will people all over the world. So please support this and continue doing everything you can to reduce Portland's emissions. I know I will be.
Thank you. Eloquently said. Okay, so let's move on forward into the sign-up sheet with Mr. Kelly and two others off your list there, please. Another volunteer who overdoes it in the number of hours he gives our city. So let's call the other first two on the list in addition to Mr. Kelly.
Justin Wood and Evan Swanson.
Okay. Good morning.
Good morning, Mayor, Commissioners. I didn't know I'd have to follow some really incredible kids.
Sorry about that. Yeah.
It's going to be hard to hold a candle to them. So, act locally, jobs, carbon, comfort, and health are my main themes. I think we've already talked quite a bit about acting locally and its importance. Jobs. The East Bill that set up Clean Energy Works Oregon and now Inhabit, I think was the most impactful, powerful jobs creator in our state in the time of the Great Recession. Those jobs need to be continued. They have been great jobs. Jobs that are family wage, jobs that provide benefits, jobs that provide entry level, and then opportunities in the construction industry. I know in my company, people have moved from our energy retrofit division onto other jobs in our business. Carbon and climate change. The average savings that we achieve in a project, an energy efficiency project, is about just over 3 tons of carbon per year per house. That kind of impact counts up. And when you think about all the years that that house is going to have an impact, it really makes a difference. Comfort and health. I think sometimes that we miss that, but I had an energy retrofit job done in my own house, and I marvel sometimes at just how much more comfortable it is. Just less drafty, more comfortable, but more importantly, health. Jackie Dingfelder referred to New Zealand. There was a study done in New Zealand. They've done hundreds of thousands of homes. That really speaks to the health issue that I think sometimes we don't talk about enough. But what they found in New Zealand was things like 40% less missed school days from the children that were living in a home that had an energy retrofit and had their home really transformed from a health perspective. Less hospital visits, less hospital visits, and less missed days of work for the parents in those homes. I mean, it really, I think, a big impact. There's some studies going on in Oregon and in the country right now that I think will bear that out here. This is common sense. I would like you to just imagine for a moment if you were proposing an ordinance to require that auto dealers could no longer disclose the mileage per gallon, how many people might be in this room. It would probably result in some objection. And finally, I think you're going to hear from my compatriots at the home builders that this shouldn't cover new homes. And I'm just going to say that a good portion of the home building community in Portland are building homes well beyond the base code. And those builders, I'm pretty sure, would want to have the opportunity to disclose the fact that they were doing that and have somebody from outside of their firm demonstrate that fact. So this is common sense. We need to do it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor and member of the council. My name is Justin Wood. I am a builder here in Portland. Our company name is Fish Construction. I heard Mr. Kelly and others talk about this being common sense, but I'm going to ask for what I think is a common sense approach, when that is to consider exempting new construction. Everything I've heard from today talks about the benefits from this program, and not one of these benefits would apply to new construction. In your own climate action plan, the climate action plan addresses existing buildings. It doesn't talk about new buildings. Also, there's been several comparisons to the city of Austin. The city of Austin exempts homes for the first 10 years of the program. They don't require it on new construction either. You ask yourself, what is the end game for newer homes versus older homes? When you get a report on an older home, it's going to give you a list of repairs that you could potentially make to have the home score higher. That report on new construction would show you virtually nothing. New homes built to code in the state of Oregon are going to routinely score a 9, if not a 10, when they're just built to code. So there's not going to be that big of a differentiation between a house built to a code, which might score a 9, and a house built to a LEED certification, which might score a 10, whereas an older home might be a 2, a 3, or a 4, and there's a huge difference in what you can achieve from it. If the goal of this is to just inform home buyers as to what features are in their home, every new construction home that's built in this city, the plans are marked with the insulation, the furnace, the water heater, everything that's put into the house. Those plans are available on Portland Maps. They're part of the permit process. They're inspected by the city to make sure that they're there. Lastly, I just want to point out, there's other agencies that do this as well in the state. The DMV doesn't require cars that are 5 years old to have an emissions test, newer than 5 years old. The only other last thing I'd like to say is this: it was mentioned earlier that this was taken in front of stakeholder groups. To the best of my knowledge, this wasn't ever taken in front of any home building groups. I also sit on the Development Review Advisory Committee, and this never came before DRAC for their input as well on how it would impact new construction. So on that, I just want to close and say Happy Thanksgiving to all of you.
Thank you very much.
Justin, quick question. If I were in the market for a new home and I was interested in a home that your company built, what where would I go to get the information to verify the energy efficiency of that home? And what's the path of least resistance? Because one of the things we're trying to do is create a uniform system, apples to apples, and we want it to be easy for the consumer to access this information. So where would I go if I wanted to get that information if I'm considering buying one of your homes?
Well, as of today, a couple different things you could do is one, you could look on the plans. And I realize not everybody's technical enough to want to look at the plans and see what's in their house, but most of us, when we list our homes, we list the energy features that the home has in it, whether it's a 95% furnace, a high efficiency gas water heater, various other things, and that's all as part of the listing. Most of us also, if we're using a realtor, will come up with some type of a sales flyer that talks about all the energy efficiency features of our home, so as a sales tool. The only thing I'll say is I think there's a step maybe that could be in between here that we're not currently doing that we could, where you could assess, like I said, most new homes come in at a 9 or a 10. You probably could score the home very easily just by saying any home built to code in the state of Oregon is a 9. And I'm guessing that somebody who's an expert in that could verify that, and you could just say that a home built to code is a 9, or whatever the number might be.
Okay, I just want to say from my point of view, the idea of uniformity has some appeal, and making it as convenient as possible for the consumer has some appeal. So having to look at plans and maybe bring some technical expertise in to help with that doesn't make an impression on me, at least. But if there is a streamlined way of getting a score because it's a new home, and you think there's a way to do that that might result in a less expensive process or a streamlined process, I'd be interested in that. But I'm less interested if it requires the consumer to go pull plans and talk to other builders and do due diligence, because the goal here, just as I don't want to spend a lot of time when I'm buying a car talking to a bunch of people, I want to look at the sticker on the windshield and have apples to apples. So if you'd consider that.
Thank you very much.
Good morning, Commissioners and Mayor. My name is Evan Swanson. I'm a mortgage professional with over 14 years of experience here in Portland, as well as a concerned property owner. I'm here to voice my opposition to the mandatory energy audit. There's no doubt that the proposed ordinance is well-intentioned. I, along with others in this room, share in the goal of reducing carbon emissions. That said, like so many other well-intentioned measures, this is stocked with unintended consequences that will negatively impact the ability of homeowners in the city to fairly and openly transact property. According to a 2016 CoreLogic report, roughly 3 out of 4 transactions in the state of Oregon involve some form of financing. As a result, 3 out of 4 homes are scrutinized by bank underwriters and appraisers. As a part of their due diligence when evaluating collateral for a loan, bank appraisers and underwriters routinely review information listed on Portland maps to gather information. It is my understanding under the proposal that the energy audit will be posted on Portland maps as well, and herein lies unintended consequence number 1. In an instance where the publicly displayed energy audit suggests any adverse conditions in the home, the underwriter and/or appraiser will be required to cross-reference the public information to make sure that the property meets minimum property requirements as set forth by Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, FHA, VA, or other applicable underwriting guidelines. In the event where the underwriter appraiser deems the property fails to meet those requirements, then the bank will demand required repairs as a contingency of completing the financing and therefore completing the sale. I will also be submitting a letter from the chief appraiser of the largest locally owned appraisal management company here in the region that solidifies this information. In some instances, the buyer and seller may be able to negotiate the required repairs without threatening the sale. However, there will be instances where the buyer and seller is not willing to spend the additional money or is not financially capable. In that case, the sale will not take place unless the seller can find a cash buyer, in which case they will likely offer a much lower price. Thus, I believe the proposed policy is unfair to low-income households who are less likely to have resources to maintain the property or do required repairs. I understand there are deferrals in the measure, but as we've talked about, the lack of a publicly displayed energy audit will trigger unscrupulous people towards predatory marketing efforts. I also want to quickly address the fallacy of the miles per gallon comparison. I can guarantee you that if you required a car manufacturer to send every car to be tested for miles per gallon, we could see that the economies of scale wouldn't apply. This is a much different requirement. Thank you.
Thank you. And you're going to submit some written, oh, folks, we only clap for students, so he may be a student in his spare time. But the question, and that is, you're going to submit your written
Yes,
testimony as well?
correct.
Good, thank you. Dan, go ahead.
So I'm just curious, do you have any idea what kind of a score would correlate with a lender requiring minimum repairs?
It's a good question, and because it's a new policy, I can't say. My concern isn't so much, the score would be the initial trigger for an underwriter appraiser to open up the report, and then possibly when they open up the recommendations tab and it says that the furnace is not working or working at low capacity, it's going to be gray area. So I don't know with certainty, but I'm certainly think it's going to open up the possibility in certain situations.
But isn't that information generally available in a home inspection?
The home inspection is not submitted to the bank as part of loan application. So lenders typically do not see the inspection. We get the appraisal.
But there is certain information must be disclosed if there's a health and safety issue.
Correct.
And that's already built into the underwriting, which is why sometimes certain kinds of repairs can be mandated in prior to closing.
Correct.
And so what evidence do we have that this is a problem in places like Austin and other places that have this requirement?
I haven't consulted with those areas.
Wouldn't that be the first place we want to look to see whether there's been any impact on lending in a city that actually requires this?
Sure, absolutely. And I can see, this is probably a minority of cases, but the problem is it's going to happen to the most vulnerable households in our city because they are the ones who are not going to have the resources. So maybe you call the city of Austin and how are they going to even know that? How do you track transactions that never happened, right? And in that case, maybe there's a few, but the bottom line is it's a few that's happening in our most vulnerable part of society.
Your experience is that the logical, the unintended consequence would be that there'd be a requirement of some kind of fix prior to closing or an adjustment in how much financing is available?
No, that the transaction would not be able to happen because if the property doesn't meet minimum property requirements, then it can't transact under conventional financing. And I would just
Our
also.
code doesn't say that we don't prescribe we haven't set minimum property requirements through our code in terms of what kind of energy efficiency you have to have.
Correct. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, FHAVA have those guidelines that are available online.
Okay, well, this is very helpful information. Obviously, we do want to see your written follow-up as well, and it might even call on you as a technical resource.
Happy to do that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you both. Okay, let's take the next three, please.
Next three, please. Christian Rusby, Jan Zuckerman, Kim Croft Miller.
Okay.
They'll be followed by Jan Leo, Kim Hayworth, and Phil Norman. And let me just announce, we have two sheets, the support opposed. I'm reading three names at a time, and then I'll alternate
Switching back and
sheets.
forth. Okay, thank you very much. Good morning. Whoever would like to go first.
Good morning. My name is Christian Rusby. First of all, thank you for your great work in supporting our citizens. I apologize for my speaking impediment, but this is very important to me. I bought a home last year with my wife, and I've sunk tens of thousands of dollars into it to bring it to modern energy codes. We would appreciate having the score to help evaluate, even roughly, how much work needs to be done to bring it up to modern energy codes. Climate change is driven by burning fossil fuels. Home heating and driving automobiles are side by side as having large impacts at making the planet hotter. Our children deserve to choose their impact on the planet they're inheriting. So through knowing with an energy score. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for coming. Good morning.
Good morning. My name's Jan Zuckerman. I'm an educator, small business owner, and mother, and I feel proud to live in a city that understands the urgent need to respond to the climate crisis. The home energy score is yet another positive step in ensuring that Portlanders take our part in cutting carbon emissions. As citizens, we overwhelmingly support no new fossil fuel infrastructure, and this requirement asks us to walk our talk by incentivizing homeowners and buyers to make energy efficient improvements. As a homeowner, I understand the responsibility that I have in impacting the environment with the decisions that I make. When my husband and I helped our daughter buy a home, we had concerns about the energy use and costs involved. The Realtor could only provide us with a heating bill from the previous owner, which gave us very little information. It was very frustrating. The Home Energy Score allows homeowners like myself to be more informed decision makers instead of victims of surprise. But more importantly, the score is a win-win situation, giving homeowners and prospective buyers the power of knowledge, ability to cut costs, and encourages investment in clean energy. The true beneficiaries of this requirement and other steps we take to curb our energy use, however, are the children that will be here when we are gone. Since November 8th, my 3 children and many of my former students have turned to me for solace. With permafrost melting at unprecedented rates, we are already rapidly approaching a tipping point in which the Arctic would change from a carbon sink to a carbon source. Each step towards implementing the Portland Climate Action Plan provides our youth with the momentum and hope to continue to make progress on even bigger issues to combat climate change. Years ago, Charlie and Vicki Hertel had a dairy farm in Tualatin Valley. When they were mandated by environmental agencies to move their operation away from the West Dairy Creek, they could not afford to relocate. Instead of giving up, they transformed their dairy into Sun Gold, an organic farm keeping alive their family tradition of caring for the land. This was no easy task. It took hard work, determination, and willingness to change with the times. Not everything has to solely be seen as a cost. Oftentimes, change is an opportunity in disguise, and that's exactly what the Home Energy Score provides. The benefits greatly outweigh the costs. Like Charlie and Vicki, we must be willing to change with the times. We owe it to our children and all life on this planet to do whatever it takes to protect them. Tomorrow, when my family gathers together, we will thank the Standing Rock water protectors for sacrificing everything to protect our precious earth and for reminding us that we should be doing the same. A home energy score may seem like an inconvenience to some, but in the big picture, it is exactly the kind of environmental justice action our city must say yes to. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for coming. Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Kim Croft Miller. Thank you so much for hearing our discussion today. I'm here as a homeowner who has suffered the unintended or the consequences of not having such a measure. We bought our home 17 years ago. It's a 1940s house, and we had 3 small girls at the time. And we woke up one morning and it was a cold house and the oil was gone. And that first bill was $1,000 that we didn't really have. And that continued on that way about every 4 months. Our house, it turned out, was an energy sieve. And we didn't really know, I mean, we learned the extent of it as the years went on. And there's nothing so stressful as a surprise. Right? We had to do a deferment on or an extension on our taxes. We had saved for taxes. We knew about taxes. We just didn't know that this kind of thing was possible. A couple of years ago, when our home was retrofitted, energy retrofitted by Inhabit, we learned exactly why. They pointed out all the areas that were so bad. But one of the big shocks was next to the fireplace, there was a place we kept the wood, and it turned out that in that compartment, there was no ceiling to that. And so it was open all the way to the attic, and the attic was uninsulated. So my husband and I just felt sick when they showed us this, because basically it was just flowing out, through years and years of thousands of dollars. And I just felt like it would have been so wonderful to know that, to know what it was going to cost, and so we could prepare for it. So I'm just here to say, please support this measure.
Thank you very much. It was a very useful story. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Okay, let's
Mayor, can I just ask the clerk, how many other people do we have testifying?
No, we have about 60.
How many?
60.
We're going to ask folks to,
So we originally, in our calendar, budgeted this for, I think, and that means we have a lot of people we may be inconveniencing. Mayor, can we do a little scheduling?
So we're going to, what we'll do, I think, is go till maybe 12:15 and then take a break. And again, we want to ask people, obviously, we want to hear from you, but if you can avoid being repetitive, we've heard great testimony so far, so I don't think we have been yet, but please do. If you think someone's already covered your point and you are willing to yield, that would be helpful as well.
Now, of course, we want to hear from everybody, but what it effectively means is morning council is now going to shift to afternoon council.
I think we're
If
going to probably.
anyone's here
Yeah,
on any of the next items, we're not going to get to them before lunch.
that's right. I think we'll probably plan on continuing the rest of the morning calendar until the beginning of our 2 PM session.
Do we have the appointee to the CRC here?
I don't know, do we? I don't. Is the appointee here? All right, we may need,
Citizen Review Committee?
yeah, we may need to take a break and deal with
Okay,
that.
yeah, I mean, if they're here, I'd hate to have them,
Yeah,
tell them to come back after lunch.
yeah, okay, let's, if we have appointee here, we'll take a break for that. Let's take some more testimony, and then we'll do that before we break. Okay? Good, thank you very much. Let's take the next 3, Sue.
Yes. Jane Leo, Jason Trombley, Phil Norman. They'll be followed by Michael Human, Sam Pastrick, Alan Lee.
Good morning. I think you're first, Ms. Leo.
Thank you, sir. Good morning. I'm Jane Leo with the Portland Metropolitan Association of Realtors, and I'm here on behalf of the 8,000 members of the association to encourage you not to adopt this flawed, costly, and intrusive ordinance. We support the efforts to reduce carbon emissions and energy usage in the city, but we do not support this proposal. When I look at the ordinance, I question, is the city intending to create a home buying tool, or is the city intending to create a program that will meet its carbon emissions? If the city is attempting to create a home buying tool, it's unnecessary. The city does not have the expertise or the knowledge to understand all the nuances that go into selling, financing, and buying a home and that are constantly changing. The city does not have a role in a financial transaction between a buyer and a seller. If the intent of this proposal is to meet the carbon emission goal, it won't. Such a mandate impacts only 4 to 6% of Portland's single-family inventory, leaving the remaining 94% completely untouched. If the city is intending that there be audits to know energy efficiency, it should be incentivizing programs for all homes, for all homeowners, whether they're buying or selling. It cannot be ignored that this program will place a demand on the general fund, despite the report that was given to you. In 2015, more than 13,000 homes transacted that would have been under the ordinance's requirements. This number does not include the home put up for sale and then withdrawn. It is unrealistic to assume only 1 FTE will be needed to track the homes for sale and screen the exemptions. As I said, instead of attempting to regulate people's behavior, the city should instead be focused on education and incentives to increase energy efficiency for all Portland homes. In fact, the U.S. Department of Energy and Energy Trust have free online do-it-yourself home energy programs. And finally, in closing, I challenge the city's interpretation of ORS 496, or 469 rather, in that the ordinance says that the city director will make the energy score available to the public. ORS 469 specifically states that the scores will not be published by homeowner name or address. This was done to do no harm. In closing, I encourage you to vote against this ordinance as it's currently written.
Jane, I have a quick question, and thank you for your letter, and it makes all the arguments that you have presented to us. Your industry, your members represent buyers and sellers, correct?
Correct.
Obviously not in the same transaction. We've heard some testimony as to why this might create complexities for a seller, but why would this additional disclosure be bad for a buyer?
PSU did a study in 2012 that said that having an energy audit did very little to change the behavior of how a person lives in the home. Education to reducing energy usage had better results than an audit. So for the buyer to know the score is not going to necessarily change their behavior or the level of energy used in that home. Also, with our older construction that was built to code at the time, short of doing a total remodel to the studs, some of the energy upgrades cannot be done. There are certain things you can do. You can put more insulation into the attic, you can insulate the crawl space, but that's not going to be comparable to a newer home. So this, to me, it's an apples to oranges comparison when a buyer looks at the energy score for one home and the energy score for the next door home. They're not necessarily going to be comparable depending on years built and energy efficiency upgrade made. Plus, the buyer has the right to, one, ask for the audit, negotiate for it if it's important to them, and secondly, through the home inspection, and I believe you have recently participated or been subject to a home inspection, you know that much of the information that is provided in an assets-based energy audit is provided in that home inspection report.
So my second question is, if there's a discrepancy between the information in the home inspection report about energy efficiency and the energy score and report that's the subject of this matter, how do you recommend that be resolved?
The property disclosure form is in state statute. It's applicable no matter where you are in this state.
That's subject to, you have to sign that under some kind of penalty.
Yes, and you also have the right as a homeowner that you don't know. That you don't know certain things about the house,
Right.
and that's totally possible.
But getting to this question, you have your disclosure, which has some information. You have, and some of it's required by law. You have an inspection, which the buyer may request, and depending on how diligent that person is, they can find a lot of stuff. And then you have this report with a score. What happens if, let's assume there's information that can't be reconciled because either someone made a mistake or there's a difference in opinion. How would you propose we resolve that problem if there's a discrepancy between any of those three disclosures?
Well, first of all, I don't think the city has a role in that. And secondly, that's up to the buyer to decide how they want to go forward on the transaction if there's a discrepancy.
If that's the case, and I've heard a lot of evidence, a lot of testimony about how this might impact sellers, doesn't, at least sort of in the cup half full way of looking at this, isn't that more information that then empowers the buyer to make a more informed decision? I mean, you may argue that it's redundant information or unnecessary or there's a cost. I understand that I've read your testimony, but since your industry represents buyers and sellers, isn't more information for the buyer generally a good thing?
We are finding that our buyers are more and more self-educated, and they are coming into it with information. They don't need the city to be demanding, being intrusive into their transaction.
That's a philosophical disagreement about whether it's mandated or whether it's voluntary.
So Jane, I know you were consulted during the development of this, and I understand your position, and I want to follow up particularly with the staff on the point you raised most prominently, which is the question about disclosure, of the information on the map. Don't need to do this now, but later it might be helpful to us if you could, through your national organization, let us know of elements in some of the other cities' programs that you think are an improvement over what's in front of us. In other words, if it's do this, do nothing, or do something else, I understand your first recommendation is don't do this, but if we're going to do it and we haven't yet gotten it to the best practice that you and the National Association of Realtors, given the experience in Austin and Washington, D.C. and these other cities, we would appreciate hearing from you about, well, if you're going to do this, fix that. And you've already obviously highlighted one of those things. I would appreciate hearing from you on that subject.
If I could just add to that very quickly.
Please, yeah.
In the city of Austin, for those of you that I met with or that your staff were available to me, I dropped off a list of the city of Austin's exemptions because those show that the city of Austin, by allowing exemptions for work already done, for remodels that were Energy Star, for houses that are being rebuilt, for houses that are newer than 10 years and built to code, they are coming closer to meeting their goal because they are exempting work that has been done from being under the mandate of an audit. So to me, that moves you closer to meeting your goal rather than being immediately punitive with a financial charge. And the ordinance reads that the director has the right to levy fines if the energy scores are not reported.
Yeah, okay, good. That's helpful. Thank you very
Can I
much.
just piggyback on one other thing? Jane, you're often in the position of coming before us and saying either that a proposal's a bad idea, or sometimes you couple it with, you think it's either illegal or subject to some kind of override. In your letter, you make a case for why you think it's a bad idea on behalf of your members, but you don't say that, you don't suggest that we don't have the legal authority to do this. So, am I reading this letter correctly?
I challenge the legal authority to post the information on Portland Maps or any public website where it's tied to the homeowner's name and the homeowner's address.
And because of what the state law is on that?
Correct. And the Oregon Department of Energy administrative rules.
All right, yeah, your paragraph, fourth paragraph deals with that specifically. Thank you. We'll check that out. Thank you very much. Good morning.
Good morning, Mayor Hales, members of the commission. My name is Jason Trombley, and I'm a community member, and I had not intended to speak this morning, but listening to the presentations this morning, I was thankful that a person who had signed up for testimony yielded their spot so that I could share information today. I'm currently a member of the Asian Pacific American Network of Oregon and also an active member of the Coalition of Communities of Color. And so it was important for me to understand kind of the complexity of what this process or this proposal will impact on low-income families and particularly communities of color. And so for me, the biggest takeaway was getting a sense of, in particular that Apano never received information on this proposal, or was, at least from my understanding from their staff this morning, that they were not engaged in earlier steps of the process. So for me, my biggest concern is that while some organizations or community members are saying that this is a potential benefit for low-income families or communities of color, the very organizations whose sole charge is to empower these families to get them to the table were never consulted. So if I'm hearing from staff at Apano that they weren't consulted, I have to explicitly ask in your name of the work around racial equity and equity for the city, what organizations were not included at the table in the development of this process. So as a community member, in the name of equity, this truly, given the work that you're championing, is really frustrating to me. And I hope that as you're working to develop this proposal and land on an official vote, that you're more inclusive of communities who you are saying that you're working to better serve.
We'll check that. Thank you very much. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm Phil Norman. I do superior weatherization, and I want something a whole lot better than this. I want checklists that the homeowner can continually update with the things that he does or hires done, not having to continue to rely on and pay out to an auditor. Audits don't work. They have a very low return in getting work actually done. This is dealing with a failure by Energy Trust over the last 10 years, whatever, to accomplish weatherization. We're down to maybe 1,500 homes weatherized a year out of $200 million that's collected with the Public Purpose Fund. We need a whole new program where a checklist maintains the list of important things to be done in a home, including roofs, plumbing, and wiring, and for all those critical repairs to be dealt with by upfront financing. People get a report, they can't deal with it, it doesn't get done. We need upfront financing for everyone.
Thank you. Thank you all very much. So I do want to, sorry, go ahead.
I know you're going to, no, I didn't have a question. I just noticed that we forgot to say that people could come up if they're caring for a small child. And I see a small child whose parents
Yes.
are desperately hanging on. So
Yeah,
if you
come
want
on
to stand
down. We're going to
great.
take this other item briefly and then return to this, but we'll extend that courtesy. I did forget to mention that. Thank you, Commissioner Fritz. Okay, so I'm going to temporarily close this hearing and move to another council item because we have somebody here as a volunteer who is willing to be appointed to important work. So we're going to take up 1299 briefly, please.
1299, appoint Andrea Chiller to the Citizen Review Committee Advisory Board to the Independent Police Review, a division of the City Auditor's Office.
Okay, come on up, please. Thank you. Thank you for waiting as well.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I want to thank you for taking us a little out of order. This is a really important issue you guys were dealing with previously. I'd like to speak a little bit about Ms. Chiller.
Constantine, put your name in the record.
Apologies, Mr. Mayor. Constantine Severe, Director of the Independent Police Review. I am here to present Ms. Chiller to you for your approval to serve a 3-year term on the Citizen Review Committee, which serves as an advisory body to the city auditor and the police commissioner on police oversight issues. Ms. Chiller, as you can tell by the packet provided to you, is an outstanding candidate who will provide a community voice on a very important board.
Thank you. Good morning. Welcome.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor. Good morning, Council.
Do you have anything you want to add, or obviously you're here for questions if we have them, but
I'm just excited to serve. I think this is a great opportunity. I'm really excited to have been selected to serve the community this way.
great. Well, we depend so heavily on volunteers to do the work of the city, so thank you for being willing. Questions for Ms. Chiller or Mr. Severe? Thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, council.
We may have people here that want to speak on this item. Let's give them a chance to do that.
Two signed up to testify, Dan Handelman and Charles Johnson.
Okay, come on up. Good morning.
Morning, Mayor Hales, mayors, and members of council. I'm Dan Handelman with Portland Cop Watch, and we're always happy to give our 2 cents about the Independent Police Review Division and the Citizen Review Committee. We don't have any objections to Ms. Chiller's appointment. I just want to point out that she's a former attorney, which now I've lost count of how many people in the CRC are former attorneys. She worked both as a public defender and assistant DA, which is, we've always encouraged that people should see both sides who sit on the CRC. We are not, as many people think, anti-police. We are anti-police misconduct. And the CRC has been proving themselves to be able to make the good decisions based on the evidence that they're given at their hearings. We're having a lot of discussions about this at the stakeholder group that you set up to try to move forward the auditor's proposal. But I think that if you attended, or I know, Mayor, your staff attended the first meeting, I think the scope of the stakeholder group is too narrow. If we're going to change the system to be less Byzantine and meet the standards that the DOJ is expecting, I'm hoping that you can open it up. And particularly, there are parts of the existing ordinance that you're going to be considering that also need discussion other than the 2 that you've limited us to. So I'm hoping that you can consider more recommendations from that group. Moreover, three members of the Citizen Review Committee were sitting at the table at the last meeting, and there's only one member of Portland Cop Watch sitting at the table, and I didn't think that was very equitable. And one of the issues that came up was the question of how do we populate those panels that the CRC is going to be hearing cases in. And our proposal at Cop Watch has been to include members of the Police Review Board citizen pool. And when I brought that up, one of the members of CRC shook their head at me because the people who were interviewed for those roles weren't told they might have to sit on some board other than the Police Review Board. And I think if we're going to be open to changing the process, we should be open to changing the process. And if the people got interviewed based on the old system, they have to be aware that a new system is coming in.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that issue of the scope is, I appreciate you raising that. We'll look at that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning. For the record, my name is Charles Bridge-Crane Johnson, and I think, Ms. Chiller may exceed some of the qualifications of people already serving on the CRC, but there's really no better context than right now to talk about the scope of the work of the CRC. And of course, the main reason the CRC exists, regardless of what its technical charge is, it's to help improve community confidence in the police, primarily by having an avenue for citizens to look at alleged misconduct and pass judgment on that conduct. Now, within the CRC, which, as Mr. Handelman noted, may be more weighted towards lawyers than even our legislature in Salem or even the Senate or the House of Representatives, we're beginning to have structural problems. When people who get arrested are not the same bell curve profile of normal Oregonians, meaning we hyper arrest minorities, and they go to a CRC, which does not really, it's composed only of successful establishment people who have never been in challenging positions with law enforcement. And we're making that situation worse and worse day by day here in Portland. We've had close to 100 people be no complainted by the district attorney. Morally, some of those people should stand in a long line of 100 people at the Independent Police Review and move that forward possibly to the Citizens Review Committee. So, Ms. Chiller, I don't want her to reconsider her volunteering, but there are some problems we're having societally generally here that we need to work on side by side with Ms. Chiller, not just in the context of the CRC.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Joe Wallace. I represent Individuals for Justice. We oppose his nomination not because of the person that's involved. It's because we ask ourselves this question. We are very bright people in this room. We have one lawyer that's present. There's another lawyer that's absent, AWOL. And we have a lot of lawyers in the room. Why are we in such a mess? Why do progressive, bright people, and why are we in such a mess? Our police department is still under investigation. COAB is almost non-existent. They're trying to survive, and you guys are trying to kill it. And yet we keep doing the same thing. You know the cliche, you keep doing the same thing over and over again. It's a sign of insanity if you expect a different result. And you keep doing it over and over again. There should have been, and there should be, on every committee and every commission, a lot more public input. We get them here at your city council where you don't want to embarrass them, so we're really handicapped of people that come here to volunteer their time, good people, and we oppose them because of the protocols, because of what you do, not what they do. So we're asking you to not to make any more decisions unless you redo the public input of who this person is, why they want to serve on the committee. We want to hear that. And we think we deserve that. And also, I'm telling you, dropping it down to 2 minutes of testimony in the main event today is obnoxious, and it is just arrogant.
Thank you. Thank you all very much. All right. Anyone else on this item? So then it's a resolution. We can take a vote, please.
Fritz.
Thank you for volunteering to serve. Aye.
Fish.
Ms. Schiller, I just was looking through your application and a couple things jumped out at me. One of them was something you did in law school that we encourage residents of Portland to take advantage of, which is you went on a ride-along with a police officer to get a firsthand sense of how officers, in this case in New Orleans, handle their job. It is, in my experience, one of the best ways to learn about policing on the ground, community policing, and I'm pleased that you did that. I also want to quote something you said at the end of your application, because I think it speaks very highly of you and your values. You closed by saying, "We are all better off when we can hold each other accountable for our actions, and having members of the community weigh in on these difficult questions gives the community a voice and ultimately helps the police serve and protect the public." I think that's very well said, and I think we're lucky that someone with your background and your values is willing to take on this important assignment. And today I'm very pleased to support your application. Thank you. Aye.
Saltzman.
Thank you, Ms. Chiller, for your willingness to serve, and I was impressed with your detailed responses to all the various questions of the application. You put some thought into it, so thank you. Aye.
Hale.
Thank you and good luck. Aye. All right, thanks very much, folks. Now we'll return again to 1298 and continue down the list there. Yes, and we have some families with young children, so we're going to show them the courtesy of giving them the chance to speak with behavior under control and much appreciated by Mom and everyone else, so thank you.
Very impressive parenting.
Yeah, that's
Bring them up for
impressive.
civic
get extra
lesson.
credit just for showing up with this crew, so thank you. Oh, we've lost a quorum. Sorry, we're going to get somebody back in the room here in a moment. So,
Why don't you tell us who you brought with us?
Hi, I'm Kendra Van Note, and this is my 3-month-old Alexander, Vivian, and Thomas. And we are actually visiting the beautiful city of Portland from Bend, Oregon today.
wow, well, that's great. Well, welcome,
Yeah.
and sorry we momentarily lost the ability to do business here as soon as we reacquire one or more of our colleagues who probably will be back quickly.
That's really great that you took the
thank
time
you.
to come, even though you don't live here. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Well done. You've been behaving very well.
There we are. We're back in action, so welcome. Please proceed.
Hello, hi, I'm Kendra Van Note. So thank you for having me, Mayor and Commissioners. We're visiting today from Bend, Oregon, and we came actually today to testify for the energy performance score. We believe that Portland really has an opportunity to lead the state in this measure, especially for somewhere like Bend, Oregon, which is the fastest or second fastest growing metropolitan area in the state. I think that Portland leading the charge in this will help us in Bend consider an option very similar to this. We've already passed a climate ordinance, our city council did earlier this fall. And so I think that having you folks pave the way here on a state level can really make an impact for those on the east side, because we value energy efficiency in Bend. I work with homeowners as well as students, AmeriCorps programs, educating them on the importance of energy efficiency retrofits, energy audits, doing mock audits with AmeriCorps teams. And I think this is just a really great win-win, and I really applaud you folks for leading the way here in Oregon, and I hope you vote yes on it today. So thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for coming with your family. Thank you. Okay, anyone else with young children that would like to take that courtesy? If not, we'll go back to the list, please.
All right, next, please. Michael Human, Samuel Pastrick, Alan Lee. They'll be followed by Michelle Gila, Steve Strode, and Terry Parker.
Welcome. Good morning.
Thank you. Good morning, and thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. My name is Michael Human. I'm an epidemiologist in environmental and occupational public health, and I'm also here today on behalf of the Metropolitan Alliance for Common Good, or MACG. I'm here today to voice my strong support for your approving and rapidly implementing the proposed policy. I think this is really critical and long overdue. Energy savings, operating costs, reduced operating costs, and jobs are not the only benefits of this policy. Energy retrofits also result in benefits for human health and for the families who live in these dwellings, and I think it's an important consideration that we pay attention to. Today's energy efficiency measures more effectively control airflow in homes, removing moisture that can build up in otherwise uncontrolled airflows in homes that can lead to mold and mildew problems, which is associated with increased breathing problems for the occupants, such as asthma, as well as more frequent respiratory illnesses. This is also linked to an issue of what we call part of the social determinants of health, especially true for low-income families who have to decide between making needed repairs in homes, doing the weatherization work, or even buying food. And having to make those decisions puts them in an unfair position. And so we know that oftentimes low-income people need to tell the kids to put on, or the elderly to put on another jacket and live with an uncomfortable situation, as opposed to the health improvements that were alluded to by Tom Kelly earlier today. So this policy is an important first step, but I urge you to go very quickly after its adoption on to meet the next step. And that is because this is so important for low-income families that I think that it's critical that we also extend this policy in the very near future to home rentals, especially multifamily situations where the homeowner or the building owner does not bear the cost of the heating and cooling, but the tenants do. And this is really going to be critical to find incentives to help make that transition happen. And because I'm over time, I'll stop there. But thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your testimony. Good morning.
Morning. My name is Sam Pastrick. I'm here with Oregon Citizens Utility Board. I made some strategic cuts in the respective time, so I'll try to get through it pretty quickly here. So CUB is an advocate, consumer advocate, and longtime energy efficiency champion. We've supported this concept for years and years and years. I mean, basically what it comes down to for us is that purchasing a home is one of, if not the single most important investment either an individual or household can make. Therein, CUB believes that home buyers need good information. They need good information about this investment to make smart choices. An energy score is a prime example of, this good information. So a home, like any building, it's a system. It's a system of components. And to improve the system, you need to understand it, and that's really important. That's really the primary goal of this policy. So offering home buyers clear information to improve their decision-making ability, it's good public policy. It's common sense, really, from our end. I think I'll close basically by saying that the city of Portland and the state also, we have a really long track record of accomplishment leading the fight against climate change, and this proposed policy is another, important leadership example. And this has already been said, but I want to say it again. With mounting uncertainty around the future of climate policy, at least at the federal level, it really is now probably more important than ever, in Cub's opinion, to continue that policy leadership at the local level through the city of Portland. So thank you, and I encourage a yes vote.
Thank you very much. Good morning.
Morning. I'm Alan Lee. I've been working in the energy efficiency area doing research and doing consulting work for about 30 years now. Worked on the first building energy codes in California, and been working on looking at rating systems similar to the kind of program that you're talking about here today. A lot of the arguments you're hearing against these approaches are the same ones I've heard on and on, again and again, from the building community and the real estate community. And time and again, they've been shown to be invalid and that the market adjusts. It's really critical, I think, to look at the residential sector because it is about 20% of the greenhouse gas emissions in the city. And without tackling both the new and existing buildings, I think it's really no hope for the city to actually accomplish its goals. I worked with the city about 6 or 7 years ago, the first time that this attempt was made to try to get a residential measure in place, and we ran into a lot of the same arguments. I think it's great what the Bureau has done to take back the information to look what's been done in other cities around the country, to examine the asset rating score as well as the energy bill disclosure approach. And I think they made a wise decision to go with the asset rating score. There are cities, Boulder, for example, that applies it to new construction in Santa Fe, at least just from a little research that I did. So it can apply to both sectors, and I think compatibility across new and existing buildings is really important. And existing buildings sales are about 10 times what the sales are of new homes. So it's not going to work just to single it out and apply it to one portion of the housing market. The asset rating approach is something that's becoming more and more common through the building codes. Actually, there's an energy rating index that's becoming incorporated in the national building model codes, and that's something I think will be very compatible with what's being proposed. So I urge you to adopt this policy.
Thank you. Thank you all very much. Okay, let's take the next three.
Next three, Michelle Gilla, Steve Strode, Terry Parker. They'll be followed by Tim Miller, David Van Hoff, and Ashley Henry.
Okay. Good morning.
Morning.
Whoever's ready, go right ahead.
Okay. All right, thank you. So Steve Strode from Portland. I'm also a realtor. And thanks for allowing me to speak here this morning. So while I'm here to voice my opposition to the proposed mandate, I wanted to be 100% clear that really support the 2015 Climate Action Plan. And our industry has done an excellent job of educating the consumer when it's in their best interest. Home inspections are now commonplace. In cities like Portland, sewer line inspections are now the norm because we want our consumers protected. More recently, radon inspections are now the norm, and they've been the standard of practice in our transactions. Why? Not because the health department told us we should do it, but because the consumer outreach and education works. We are the trusted advisors in the transaction, and as regulations have made transactions more complex, we are trusted even more. I look around the room and I saw all the right to know stickers. Absolutely, we have a right to know now. It's part of the transaction. We can write things into our inspection addenda that ask for things like this. So that right to know exists. We 100% support the right to know. A troubling premise with the whole proposal is that consumers, without additional bureaucracy, don't see the value or importance of energy efficiency on its own. That's totally false. Consumers are rational. But they know when they're buying an older home that they have to make improvements and updates. Their home inspections give them that roadmap already. But right now, our pocketbooks are just stretched. We are in a period of high home prices, and buyers who buy older, non-updated homes typically make improvements when their pocketbooks allow. One project at a time, one thing at a time, they take it off. So an energy score really will have no practical effect. Moreover, after the first incremental change, that score is immaterial. So for that reason alone, the score should never be placed on public-facing sites like portlandmaps.com. Others will use that data, such as appraisers, which was spoken to earlier, or realtors looking to complete market analyses, but that data will be unreliable and valuations will be skewed. And with the income exception in the proposal, the city will be making sellers tell the world on Portland Maps their income level. That has no business being on a public-facing website. So we've already heard about the unintended consequences. I can skip that paragraph that Evan talked about. And again, I agree the goals to reduce emissions are essential, but this doesn't set metrics for accountabilities as well. It criticizes the free market for prior attempts, but also relying on the free market to make the right decision going forward just by giving this information. So I encourage you to vote no. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good
Mr.
morning.
Stroh, can I?
Yes.
You said that somehow this requires an income level to be disclosed?
Well, if you're qualifying for the exemption, you will not have the score on the site. I'm sorry, you will have the score on the site. You're telling the world, I'm income disadvantaged.
Thank you. We'll check on that question because this issue of disclosures come up quite a bit. So
Yeah,
appreciate it.
exactly. Yeah, thanks.
Good morning.
Hi, I'm Michelle Gilla. I'm a realtor here in Portland as well, and also speaking to ask you to vote no on this mandate. I'm a huge proponent of climate goals and making those goals very important in my own life. I've had energy audits on all of the homes that I own here in Portland. In the interest of time, Steve, Evan, Jane have all made most of the points I was going to make today as well. I would say that my experience with them, with the audits themselves, is that they do become obsolete pretty quickly. And so one of my questions on this mandate is, at what point prior to a sale is this mandatory? If you have a buyer who buys a house, they're relying on a score that a seller had done 2 years ago. The buyer turns around and sells and is using that same score. At what point are we in a problem situation with disclosure to the next buyer? And of course, I worry about myself, my business, my role in passing on information that may not be valid anymore. And my other large concern is as well the poverty situation being posted on a public website. People take advantage of poverty all the time. We don't need that for our homeowners. I would also like to say that I would like this removed from the real estate transaction altogether. I think that we need efficiency focus for all our homeowners in Portland, not just those that are transacted.
Okay, thank you very much. Good morning.
Thank you. Terry Parker, Northeast Portland. As we all know, the city genuinely conveys its appreciation when the federal government or the state passes legislation that includes unfunded mandates. Sarcasm aside, that is just what you are proposing here for people that, for whatever reason, want to sell their homes. Just like with a new car or appliance, it may make sense to require a home energy audit or score on a new house when the builder can claim a tax deduction. However, just like when purchasing a used car where the fuel consumption can vary from the original mileage sticker or a used appliance that has no sticker, any home energy scoring responsibility for the previously lived in homes needs to be the responsibility of the purchaser as opposed to the seller homeowner. Most banks require an inspection of property to get a loan. Any energy scoring system should be part of that inspection, not something separate and not dictatorial unfunded mandate assessed on the homeowner seller. If the city council chooses to become a dictator in this realm, the city also needs to cover the costs to individuals and families for any associated fee that comes with the mandate. If the buyers of previously lived-in homes are responsible for the inspection fee, recouping the money from the city can be done by allowing the same amount to be deducted from the property taxes following the purchase. What is being proposed here is yet another government dictatorial mandate, required fee that will hit people of modest middle-class incomes the hardest. Blue-collar workers who see their jobs going away, the incomes not keeping up with inflation and taxes, fear the trend for more government intrusion, regulation, and fees continuing, and therefore likely voted for Trump. The bottom line problem here is a growing number of people that are being squeezed in between the bread of the affluent and entitlement sandwich. This includes senior citizens on fixed incomes that feel their views are no longer represented in government. The city needs to fund any home energy audit. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all very much. Okay. The next three.
Next, please, Tim Miller, David Van Hoff, Ashley Henry. They'll be followed by Cynthia Chase, Rick Dodge, Jeff Papazian.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much. Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Tim Miller, and I lead a nonprofit called Inhabit. You've heard of us a couple times today. We help people improve their homes. Inhabit strongly supports this proposed policy for climate, health, equity, and job creation benefits. But I'm also here due to a personal experience. I was really troubled to read alarmist and unfortunately incorrect information promoted online. The message about this policy said, the bill is being pushed through with laser speed and will possibly require costly repairs to comply with arbitrary standards. The Oregon Association of Realtors and your local Portland Metropolitan Association of Realtors have spent thousands of dollars in our attempt to inform the public. There are some misleading issues in there. Was this pushed through with laser speed? No. The Bureau already explained the timeline and all the work that went into this. Would this require costly repairs? No, there are no repairs required in this policy. Does this policy use arbitrary standards? No, the policy uses U.S. DOE standards improved by state law through 2801 and other work. So these misconceptions created fears and likely prompted many of the concerned people that are here today. So the policy should not be stopped by misunderstandings or misinformation, certainly. Number two, I'd like to mention that we talked about making sure that this doesn't have a negative impact on lower income members of our community. Let's also bear in mind that this actually can create an opportunity for wealth building for many members of our community. The FHA, the VA, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac all have lending solutions for lower income folks to be able to make investments in their home, and many of those are tuned to energy efficiency measures to provide extra benefits. Finally, the notion that this information is the same as you would get in an inspection is simply not the case. The typical home inspection doesn't address all these energy issues, and it's not being done by a certified energy expert. So the policy certainly should not be killed on those misconceptions. For the sake of efficiency, continued progress toward housing affordability and stability, and other benefits, I urge you to support this policy.
So since you have a lot of expertise in this, let me just pose a question that I'm still thinking about.
Yes, sir.
A home inspection turns up in the report a notation that the windows have failed, which would be relevant to energy efficiency.
Okay.
The energy audit does not so find, or vice versa, and you have a discrepancy, because that's an example of something that could be found in a home inspection that might be relevant to the energy score. What is the consumer's option in terms of reconciling a discrepancy of that kind?
Right. So the consumer will have, one of the important distinctions between the inspection and this work, this energy assessment, is that it's essential that the assessment happen at the time of listing, not later in the process at the time of inspection, because the assessment has to be part of the consideration for the buyer. That makes it part of the consideration for an appraiser, and that's what builds it into the value of the home to address the market now. If we don't do inspections or assessments until later, it'll be 10 years from now until those energy assessments will become part of the market. So to your point, though, about a difference between an inspection and an energy assessment, inspection is more likely to point out a broken window, but it's not going to tell you that it's a single pane inefficient window. If there's differential information there, the homeowner would have already seen the incorrect information if they disagreed with it at the time of assessment early on. So that can be corrected through the process of listing their home and working their home and getting this report as part of the buyer's consideration set. There are a number of quality control measures baked into this policy. We can't use the US DOE score unless we have quality control measures baked in that Joan, who was on the video, requires. The 2801 law locally here in the state also requires levels of quality and certification for the inspectors. There's also data review required of these scores so that we can look across the scores and see that my friend Dave over here, who's an assessor, let's pretend, is scoring everybody high or mischaracterizing everybody's windows or doing something out of the norm. So there are data-driven quality control measures as well to drive quality and assurance into this system.
Great, thank you very much. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm Dave Antoff. I'm the Acting State Director for Climate Solutions, and thank you for letting us to come in and testify in support of this important policy. As you've heard, the importance of local and regional leadership on climate change has never been greater. Over the next 4 years, there's going to be just an increased heightened focus on the needs for local action. And so for the city of Portland to be taking a leadership role on something, this has been done nationally, but this is the first, I think, real stab at it in the Pacific Northwest. As we just heard, hopefully it will be a beacon for others to see that this works, it makes sense, and people want it as it becomes more popular or more utilized. We want to thank Mayor Hales and council members for your great leadership over the last couple of years. The fossil fuel infrastructure policy is a huge step forward along the same lines of kind of showing the way that a jurisdiction can hopefully build support well beyond its borders more regionally. As Senator Dembrow, I think, noted, the need for energy efficiency focus is very high right now. The state has done some good stuff on renewable energy infrastructure. We've passed renewable portfolio standards at the state level to try and increase renewables in our system. We've been working on energy efficiency for a long time, and long time had been recognized as national leaders on energy efficiency, but that really is starting to erode and go away, as you also heard. Just on codes, there's misperceptions that Oregon is still a leader on energy efficiency and codes. We're not. We're falling behind. And that's a focus at the state level where we're trying to work with allies to empower cities like Portland to be able to have increased energy efficiency in the codes. We need to take a major step forward on that for new construction. But for existing buildings, homes, this is just a really important tool for increasing awareness of how energy impacts people's budgets and their bottom line. And just providing that tool, we've seen from some of the jurisdictions that have the short term that we've seen where it's been in place, it has resulted in an increase in energy efficiency investments in homes and an improvement of the quality of those homes. So I think it's got a proven track record. The costs are very, from the sale of a home in the Portland market right now seems to be very reasonable in terms of how to integrate this into the system. And we just strongly support moving forward with this policy. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you both very much. Thank you. Okay, take 3 more.
Next up, please, Cynthia Chase, Rick Dodge, Jeff Papazian. They'll be followed by Kelly Haynes, Jeff Cole, and John Morris.
Good morning.
Hi.
Okay, submit written testimony. Thank you. Go ahead, please.
My name is Cynthia Chase. I've been a real estate broker in Portland, Oregon for 18 years. My primary business is residential, and my primary business area is the city of Portland, where I also reside and own rental properties. I've been active on the Sustainability Committee of the Portland Metropolitan Association of Realtors over the last couple of years. I'm not a climate change denier. I believe in making properties more energy efficient and have systematically done that on the property we live in and the properties we operate as rentals. I often recommend energy upgrades to buyers as they look at properties. I never have recommended energy efficient upgrades to sellers, as I know they are looking to sell and that those upgrades will not directly benefit them. I do not see requiring sellers to provide an energy score to buyers as part of a sale as a good idea. A new property owner is very often not in the position to do energy upgrades at the beginning of their tenure in the property. These reports may well be shelved until later, as in much later in the homeownership process, and may well need updating, which means more costs to that property owner. Instead, I propose that the city work on these very admirable goals in different ways, and I have a few suggestions for that. One, instead of a requirement for sellers, why not approach buyers as new homeowners with education and incentives after the sale is closed? Two, why not help current homeowners complete energy upgrades? I would especially like to see us focus on our elderly, low-income homeowners who pay energy bills on drafty houses. Why not focus more resources on helping them? Three, new homeowners and longtime owners often struggle with wanting to have good-looking yards and not using chemicals. We could help them by offering more education and, again, some incentives for doing more sustainable gardening, which can include growing fruits and vegetables and using more natives in our landscaping. Several organizations exist to further these goals, including Master Gardeners through the OSU Extension Service. I'm a new Master Gardener this year, and partnering with them to reduce greenhouse gases through gardening would be a positive change for our city. Number four, I'm about 60% serious here. Here's an out-of-the-box suggestion. Why not ban gasoline-powered leaf blowers in the city, reducing pollution and noise all at the same time? This time of year, it's an especially apropos idea to improve our city. Let's not get stuck in one way of thinking to solve these problems. Adding an energy score in real estate transactions seems easy and helpful to some, but I'm not one of them. If it's mandated, real estate brokers will work with our sellers to do it, but I don't think it's going to produce the change you hope. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good morning.
Morning. I'm Rick Dodge, and I am a Realtor also, and have been for 30 years. And I'm a late or an early baby boomer, and feel that since this has come about, a lot of discussion has been made with the public. And I have an electric blower to tell you where I'm at. But what the sentiment out there is that the government doesn't have a right to know. The buyers do, they agree. And I wish today, as a form that we have, that we give to prospective buyers of all the inspections, just a myriad of inspections that they can have on a property that would cover everything that we're talking about today. And if I'm wrong, somebody can come correct me on this. And I get the feeling here that there is perhaps another way of doing this. And Dodd-Frank gave us plenty of regulations to empower consumers. And as the loan officers has mentioned before, the issue of the issues that are involved with buying and selling a house are a big burden on a lot of people out there already, let alone an energy audit, which seems to have what I feel are some can be problematic. And I personally have used Energy Trust because they have an incentive through their marketing and education, which I think we don't see enough of out there, is the way to go on this, instead of the intrusion that, again, this is what the public that we're talking to every day, they're sick and tired of being sick and tired.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. I appreciate my 2 minutes or maybe less than 2 minutes of fame. My name is Berenice Lopez. I am a business owner of Home Energy Life Performance Group, also known as Help Group, Inc., a home performance contracting firm. I also own a company called Moving Ready LLC. It's a residential general contractor that specializes in getting homes ready for sale or for rent, ready for the market. It might be worth noting that I'm also a licensed real estate agent and a property management agent. So I'm here today as a very strong supporter of this policy. My company alone since 2008 have retrofitted and saved energy in over 1,700 homes. More than half were low-income families or medium-income families, and created more than 40 full-time sustainable jobs. So like you said, Major, home energy scoring is a win-win for all. See, some realtors here in this room might argue that this policy is unnecessary, costly, intrusive, and burdensome. And I get it, because we have to do a little bit more work ourselves in order to list the property on RMLS. But it's really simple. All we need to do is invest time and educate themselves and ourselves, realtors, in more important issues about listing a home, rather than focusing in what is the latest granite that is in style, the new trendy wall color, or hardwood floor finishes. What could be more sexy than talking about fiberglass insulation versus cellulose insulation, or the U-value of windows, right? So passing this home energy score policy will support efforts that will promote, number one, business growth. For those businesses like my business, which I can see several of my people that I know that have businesses here today, we employ people of our community. We'll promote long-term opportunities and family supporting wages with benefits, better opportunity for skilled laborers. It will also promote and encourage consumers' awareness in energy efficiency, indoor air quality, health and safety issues in our community. It is our civil duty as residents of this amazing city of Portland, regardless of our professional background, to make our community better, and home energy scores will help do that. So I thank you, and I hope you for your support.
Thank you very much. Thank you all. So again, let's do a process check. I'm planning to break at 12:25, and the question is what time we would want to return.
Mayor,
Are we returning on this subject? or-
Well, we'll see. I think we probably have heard most of the testimony that we're going to hear on this, but
I have some comments.
I know we're going to try to get a few more people in.
we do have, a notice in the afternoon schedule, Mayor. We had that placeholder for comp plan,
We don't need it anymore.
which we don't need,
Right.
so we could come back at 2 and pick up the regular agenda, or we could come back at 2, do the hearing, and at 3, pick up the regular
That's
agenda.
probably.
Tomorrow is
that.
Thanksgiving, so we are going to lose people.
We're not going to be
Uh,
meeting
so-
tomorrow.
No, I mean, we'll lose people later.
Today, yeah.
People are going to be leaving early to travel today, so.
So
My preference would be that we take a skinnier lunch and come back and finish the regular agenda so that by 2, we can hit the hearing and be done.
Okay, so maybe just break from 12:30 to 1?
How many still want to testify?
Okay, we're not gonna make it to 12:30. I have to leave at 12:30,
Well,
but,
can we go to 1 minute?
all right. So one option is go to 1, but it's just the 3 of you without me. You wanna do that?
Yeah.
All right,
I
so,
think people have already waited a very long time.
okay, what we'll go, if we got 3 members of the council that are willing to continue to 1 o'clock, let's do that, and then we'll break. And I will have to leave at 12:30 for
And
a
then
previously scheduled.
when do you want to resume the regular agenda?
I think you're right about taking up the regular agenda at 3 PM after the 2 o'clock times, or immediately following the 2 o'clock time certain.
Okay.
How's that sound? That sound good? Okay, so we will continue hearing people. Again, my apologies, I will be leaving briefly for half an hour from 12:30 to 1, but let's go on.
And Mayor, can I also just say, if we're moving to 1 minute, we often find that people who have 3 minutes can say the same thing succinctly in 2 minutes. We've also found people who have 2 minutes can speak succinctly in 1. Well, we have to accommodate a lot of people today, and the point is, Please do not interrupt.
Please don't interrupt.
Please do not interrupt.
Ms. Vanderlyn, please don't interrupt.
please do not interrupt. The thing that's most useful for us, we don't make decisions based on 100 people testified this way, 60 people testified that. What we're looking for is arguments that maybe haven't been raised. So don't feel that you need to repeat the same mantra, because we're smart enough to understand that the 10th time we've heard that theme. But if you have a new argument that you think hasn't been raised, that you want us to grapple with, please frame that, because then we have a chance with staff later to come back and say, give us some feedback on that. So we particularly appreciate new issues that haven't been raised, because that informs our decision making.
Thank you. Let's go forward.
Next, I have Jeff Cole, John Morris, Robert Hammerly, followed by Diana McCready, James Waters, Kelly Hartnett.
Good morning, or good afternoon. Welcome.
Morning.
Go ahead.
Good
Who would
morning.
like to go first?
Okay, my name's John Morris.
So we're going to 1 minute?
We'll try to go to 1 minute. Please try to be succinct, everybody.
Okay,
My name is John Morris, and I'm a Northeast homeowner and a small business owner here in Portland. I'm here representing the Northwest Energy Efficiency Council. We represent a number of businesses that do energy efficiency work in Portland. The council supports a proposed action by the city of Portland to institute a mandatory energy asset scoring system for residential properties. NEEC is a nonprofit industry association, just to make sure it's clear. There's no more time-honored business principle that you can't manage what you don't measure. This is particularly true when it comes to building energy use. Energy performance metrics help make the otherwise invisible concept of energy use and make it apparent and actionable. As a longtime proponent of energy benchmarking and disclosure, which has been successfully adopted and implemented by the city of Portland, NEEC believes that a similar system will provide widespread benefit when applied to the residential housing stock. I'll conclude with a comment that I've been doing energy awareness for consumers for 12 years. They spend about 18 minutes on average per year on their utility bill. This bill will help them.
Thank you. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Mayor and council members.
Just give us your name again.
Robert Hammerly. I operate a heating and cooling company here in Portland. And the 3 points I want to make are, one, I want to attest to the volume of new home buyers who are floored by their unexpected heating bills in their first year of the home. We've had some homeowners attest to that today, and we get scores of these calls every winter. And a lot of times it's a true financial impact that they might not be able to make their mortgage payment because of the unexpected heating bill. Second, I want to counter the argument made by the Realtor Association and the mortgage broker. Basically, when you boil their argument down, it's public information is bad because it might gum up the works. And I think if you gave them the opportunity, they would probably want to throw home inspections out the window as well, because that might gum up the works of the transaction. And then three, volume. I've heard an argument that there's not enough people out there to perform these scores. Our organization has presently approximately 10 individuals certified to do these scores, and we would be happy if we get a market signal to invest and grow a division of more people doing these scores.
Thank you. Thank you both very much. Thank you. Next.
Diana McCready, James Waters, Carrie Hartnett.
Maybe two more? I'll say first one now. Okay.
Daniel Moreau, Paul Grove.
Sorry. Okay, that's fine. Come on up. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Carrie Hartnett, 2017 President of the Portland Metropolitan Association of Realtors. I've served on the Green Advisory Board at the National Association of Realtors, and I also hold the Earth Advantage Broker certification. I have 12 years of experience in real estate as a licensee. I'm a proud single mother of a 16-year-old at Benson High School and a homeowner in Northeast Portland. I'm offering this testimony in opposition of the pre-listing home energy score proposal on behalf of our 8,000 members. We definitely support the goal of reducing carbon emissions, absolutely. Every day, though, home sellers struggle to sell what is often their largest financial asset, and home buyers are stretching to make the down payment and closing costs. If the city adopts this proposed mandate, you'll be adding an additional burden to the seller, and in some circumstances, unnecessarily. As you've heard, this information is similarly found on the inspection report that I always recommend. The proposal requires settles to pay for energy audit score before they can list their home for their private property. This is private property for sale to the city. We already know that it's going to be published or proposed to be published on websites such as Portland Maps. This is intrusive. In addition, by publicly posting the score, 35% of Portland's single-family homes built before 1940 will be disadvantaged because of the score that will be lower than a newer property. If the city's goal is to reduce carbon emissions, I encourage you to incentivize homeowners to make energy efficiency improvements to their home rather than mandating an unnecessary piece of paper that will not do that. On behalf of our members at PMAR, I encourage you to reject the proposal in front of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning.
Morning, Nick Crowder. I'm a broker with Keller Williams Real Estate and a resident of Portland I've been in brokerage for 10 years. The thing that I see that's frustrating is that this is a right to know. I see these stickers everywhere. Buyers right now, and for my whole career, could get the utility bills and know the exact cost of what the previous owner was paying to operate the utilities in the home. So this information is known in very specific form, not in an abstract of a score, because the score doesn't tell you exactly what you're going to be paying. I can tell you after helping 500 people in my career buy or sell real estate in Portland that unfortunately this is not part of the buying decision for 99% of the people. And I'm saying that from my experience as one of the top brokers in this town. If the buyers wanted to know and there was a financial incentive to have a public record of this as a incentive to a buyer to buy that house over a different one, sellers would already be doing this on their own and promoting this as part of their marketing of their home, and that simply isn't happening. It also bothers me that this could cause delays. We hear a lot about that it's only $200, but right now we're experiencing huge increase in costs on appraisals because we do not have enough appraisers to keep up with our market. And I expect that exact same thing to happen with this program. Again, with Carrie, I suggest that why don't we incentivize all of the people of Portland to create more efficient homes as opposed to punishing the people that are trying to sell their homes today. Thank you.
Mr. Grove won't take offense, but I have to leave.
No offense, Mayor Hales, members of council. For the record, Paul Grove with the Portland Home Builders Association. I will heed your advice. I will be brief. We have submitted written remarks. You can read at your leisure. And testimony has already been discussed today about exempting new housing. Our sustainability manager will also be testifying to this as to the reason why. Appreciate staff's effort in this. I appreciate the spirit from which they are coming on the proposal and taking the time to discuss this over the summer. So with that, I will conclude. Thank you.
Well, I have a quick question for you. In the report that we got, it says that BPS considered exempting new construction homes from the legislation. It goes on to say that, however, after research and energy costs, the Bureau found that energy costs can vary significantly between a code-built new home and a high-performance new home, and this demonstrates there's still need for disclosure of energy efficiency even in new homes. How do you respond to that?
Mr. Fish, I probably am not in a position to give you an answer today, but when our sustainability manager comes up, and she has worked closely with this, with our Home Performance Council, who build and meet and exceed this, I think she could provide you a better, more detailed answer to that.
Or we accept something in writing after.
And we certainly can follow up in writing.
Okay, thank you all.
Yes.
Next three, please.
Next three, please. Don McGodrum, Ron McDowell, and Danny Kelly.
Okay, I don't see anybody coming to the table. Want to try the next three, Sue? Oh, we got one.
Next two.
Next two?
So I just got a message on behalf of the pro side that we're going to, we've organized amongst ourselves to limit the number of testifiers so that we can expedite through this and avoid repetition.
Okay. How about one more name, Sue?
Holly Brown.
Okay, well, great. Welcome. Just give us your name, and you each have 1 minute, and there's a clock in front of you there.
Hi, I'm Jana Gastelum, Climate Program Director at the Oregon Environmental Council. I wanted to answer a couple of things that have come up. We bought a home 3 years ago, and despite knowing about what energy scores are and having a realtor who also supported them, I asked for one during the process and was told I could not get one because it was a very competitive market. It was a seller's market, and as a buyer, I couldn't get a score because it was an extra, something additional, and it would have made our bid less competitive. So I was declined this information. So I'm still facing childcare costs and have to do monthly budgeting. So I did call the utilities to try and get a sense of what those costs would be. But I have no way of knowing if that's based on occupant use or the home performance of a building. I'm now facing this next year $30,000 of childcare costs. And so monthly bills really do make a difference. An asset rating provides good information that you can make sound financial decisions on. And without a mandatory score that includes all houses, you can't do that cost comparison. And lastly, on the climate, any action that can be taken has cumulative impact when it comes to energy efficiency. If we had had information up front, we could make home improvements early on. That makes a tremendous difference for the climate. And so those little things do add up over time. So I urge support of this. Thank you.
Thank you. Ma'am?
Hi there, I'm Hillary Barassa, and I'm a realtor in Portland. I do most of my residential real estate in Portland. I do not believe that I've been spoken for yet today, even though there's been some numbers thrown around for large numbers of realtors. I believe that Portland is such a leader, and this is something that makes me so proud to be a part of. I've watched this group put together this policy with tons of thought. They've taken a lot of the feedback. I urge all the realtors who are opposed to this to continue to speak your voice, because they've been so positive in incorporating those concerns. I think that we have to base the decision on facts, and the facts seem to show that it's going to help us get to where we want to be with our climate change goals in Portland. I personally have done hundreds of transactions in this city, and I've never had an appraiser look on Portland maps and come back and create a problem with the transaction with something that they found there. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Ma'am?
Thank you. Good morning, afternoon. My name is Holly Braun, and I represent Northwest Natural. We are strongly in support of this policy as a mechanism to help transform the residential energy efficiency market. As a utility, we seek least cost energy resources to keep rates down for our customers. The current voluntary offering is excellent, all the incentives we have today that have been spoken about, but they only appeal to the innovators and early adopters in the market transformation paradigm. This 2% of the market requires expensive incentives in order to act on energy efficiency, but a policy like this that is intuitive, educational, and really level setting has the potential to truly transform the understanding of the home residential market. I think in time this would nullify the need for expensive incentives. This program will potentially save ratepayers millions of dollars and save dramatically more energy than we do today by creating market demand for high-performing homes. This policy is a natural next step in the market transformation paradigm, and we urge you to support it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you. Next three.
Daniel Moreau, Caitlin Horsey, Laura Kovac.
Okay,
Chris?
I see one person coming up.
Keep going.
We got
Chris and Philip Mandel. Are they here?
Keep going.
keep going, yeah.
And then Ann Rose Shapiro, Rio Marquez Hammett, Craig Acker,
Okay, how about, keep going.
Janet Gastelum.
I think she just testified. So we need one more name.
Hillary Barassa.
Yeah, she just testified.
Okay, I'm sorry, I couldn't keep up with the names. Faith Graham.
How about, who's
Who's
raise
gonna
your
be
hand
here?
if you haven't testified. All right, ma'am, why don't you come forward? We'll just start bringing people forward. Go ahead.
Yeah, one.
Thank you.
Yeah, come on up. We'll start with you in the middle since you were here first.
Okay.
Just give us your name and you have a minute.
Okay. Hi, I'm Caitlin Horsley. I'm with the Portland Home Builders Association. I am our sustainability manager. As Paul let you know, I'd be coming up here. As the sustainability manager, I work closely with our Home Performance Council, and our mission is to foster sustainable building knowledge, education, and application in this industry and within our membership as well. We definitely, as a group, have had some robust conversations around this, and we applaud your efforts in not only putting the appropriate value on the work that we do, but also further educating homeowners on the cost of home ownership and operating costs. However, to get to the point and go into some of your remarks before, we do not support the use of the home energy score, the HES, the specific score that you're choosing for new construction. And the reason behind that is, if you talk to builders in my group, they would say that their homes are already a 9 or a 10. So there's really no incentive for them to be pushing that envelope like they've been doing in past years to do even more efficient things and save us even more energy and help our environment even more so. So why would we want to use a score that dissuades them from
from doing even better than they already are.
So if I can just ask you a question, I mean, where is it written that a new home equates to a 9 or a 10 on the home energy audit scale?
It's not written, but they get their homes scored, right? So
Scored
they
by-
usually use an EPS, the Energy Trust EPS, which is a local score that most of my builders use. But they can also get an HES very easily, and they are always a 9 or a 10, usually a 10.
Thank you. Go to you next.
Thank you, Council. My name is Annie Rose Shapiro. I'm a commercial realtor with Workspace Commercial and a residential realtor with Urban Nest Realty. I support the energy audit, and I don't feel my voice has been represented here today. Our job as realtors is to educate and guide our clients as they make the biggest financial decision of their lives. We need this data to uphold our most sacred, if you will, mission. This allows us to guide buyers, sellers, and also current homeowners with hard data that will let them know what the return on investment is going to be when they sell. As we accumulate this data, it will help us learn what this really means. It's not currently valued in the market. 2% of houses are scored, and that makes that data meaningless because there's nothing to compare it to. The most important and impactful part of this score is that every single real estate transaction will include a conversation about sustainability and environmental impacts. As realtors, we are the experts in buying and selling for many of our clients. Housing is a leading source of emissions. They depend on us to educate them, and this allows us to fully integrate this conversation into our day-to-day lives. It's important. We can't rely on messaging and incentives that only reach those who are already converted.
Okay, thank you. Ma'am?
Hi. Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Theodora Songas, and I'm speaking today on behalf of Oregon Physicians for Social Responsibility. We support the proposed amendment to the City Code on residential energy performance rating disclosure. This action will help the city meet its objectives to reduce carbon emissions and reduce energy use of all buildings. We support this because it's a common sense part of the package of actions we must take to meet objectives of the Climate Action Plan and other city resolutions. If we are to address the contributions of buildings to carbon emissions, we must include residences. This is a good way for people to understand and address their own personal impact on carbon emissions. Climate disruption is the most important issue facing humanity. We need to do our part to reduce our contributions to it. We are taking steps in other areas to reduce carbon emissions to meet our climate action objectives. This is one of the domains we must add in order to take responsibility for and reduce our own impacts on climate change. Oregon Physicians for Social Responsibility supports this proposed ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you all. Okay, we have some more people who want to testify? Come on up. First, take the first three to grab chairs. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. My name is Jamie Duhamel, and I'm here to speak on behalf of Commissioner-elect Chloe Udaly, who strongly supports this home energy score policy. Chloe Udaly definitely supports everything that's been said today, especially that it will stimulate our economy by providing jobs at local solar, HVAC, plumbing, insulation, and other related local businesses. Commissioner-elect Udaly also supports a requirement for landlords to perform assessments and achieve a minimum level of energy efficiency on rental units. Landlords and tenants would both benefit from energy cost savings, and we all would benefit from associated decreases in carbon pollution. Furthermore, the city should develop a property-assessed clean energy, or PACE, financing mechanism for residential buildings as it has for commercial buildings. PACE loans have funded over $1 billion of energy efficiency and renewable upgrades to residential buildings in California alone. Thanks again for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you.
You've also been selected as the Commissioner's new policy director, is that correct?
Correct.
Congratulations and welcome.
Thank you very much. I look forward to working with all of you.
My name is Peter Tofalvi. I am co-owner of Abacus Energy Solutions. I will limit my comments to issues that didn't get enough comments. Inspections don't typically include energy-related information. Inspectors are not trained to understand how the different energy-related systems of a home work together, how well or how poorly they work. And they don't include that information in the reports. I bought a house. I knew what I was getting into, electric ceiling heat, but I still didn't know how much it would cost to heat it because there was no heating bills available from the previous owner. Only after the purchase did I learn that it will cost me $300 to $400 a month to run that electric ceiling heat in the winter. So I had to take another loan to change the heating system in the house. In my opinion, the opposition from real estate professionals is short-sighted. They focus on the added cost and forget the benefit to them, which is this will be one more way to differentiate their products on the market, one more way to advertise differences in their products, to create excitement about features and benefits of a home. This is why real estate professionals on the East Coast first opposed and embraced the energy score. I am sure they will do that here too. Thank you.
Thank you. Sir?
My name is Brian Simmons. I'm testifying today as a homeowner, also a landlord locally. I am also the former senior vice president of one of the country's largest energy efficiency consulting firms that has its largest presence here in Portland, named ClearResult. I obviously support this program and this initiative. One of the things that I'd like to point out is that the state of Oregon has done something that a lot of other states haven't done in this nation, which is to actually have a market-based initiative to support these types of scores and these types of audits. Many of the contractors that you saw here locally have, their jobs were created because of this. They also integrate the score along with the measures being adopted. You can look to Boston where there has been a failure, where the utilities did the score and then market had to do the work. On adoption post the audits being done. And then you look in this market, we've had a higher uptake in work where audits have been accomplished. I think the nice part about a score is that we'll also add consumer behavior initiatives to this effort, where we have seen uptakes in commercial environments with that as well. I'm going to provide some written testimony because I do know time is limited, but I did want to come up and make those points. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Okay. Who's left? How many? Okay, are you the last three?
The one in the back.
Last four?
Thanks for hanging in there today, folks.
Okay. So these are the last four people that are going to testify today. And we'll start with you.
Thank you. I am one of the low-income homeowners that people have been referring to. My name is Sherry Pelsma, and making a home purchase was the biggest financial decision of my life, and not coming from a background of other people who had owned homes, the process was incredibly intimidating. There were so many things to consider that required inspections helped me to navigate priorities. And I come from the energy world, and so insisted on learning about the energy, score, for lack of a better term. But my brother, who's also a low-income homeowner, had a bad inspector and he had a bad realtor, and he ended up in a money pit situation when it came to energy. I decided to make energy upgrades instead of the more sexy kitchen remodel upgrades. And I would also like to know that when I sell my home, which is going to be the core of my retirement plan, since I don't get retirement, that I will get rewarded for that in equity and the sales price at the end, which I think this score would help accomplish.
Okay, thank you very much. Sir, go ahead.
Ted Gleichman, Oregon Sierra Club. I will not recapitulate my fascinating testimony, which is being provided to you in hard copy, but I will say a couple of things quickly. We strongly support the excellent work that BPS has done on attention to low-income issues, and we would look forward to engaging on that going forward. The testimony today has made it very clear that that must be a top priority for 2017. Because this information does need to be public information, yet people must be prevented from any predatory action affecting them. So there's a tricky balance there, and we'd like to help on that as we can. A couple of fallacies that have been presented. Delay is a fallacy. Energy Trust made it clear that the number of auditors available is adequate now, and more can be quickly added to the market, and that will not likely raise costs, given the Austin experience. Obsolescence of the report is a fallacy, in that if a homeowner doesn't have the money to do anything, then they will still have a valid report by not doing anything until it's time for them to do something. These things can be worked on and updated. BPS is attentive to all of that, and they provided ample attention to the exemption and deferral issue to deal with specific situations. Finally, efficiency and conservation are overlapping but distinct sets of issues. They are not the same thing. Efficiency does not necessarily include conservation, and that's why starting with deep weatherization is so important. Thank you so much.
Sir?
Commissioners, thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm here as the Executive Director of the Home Performance Guild of Oregon. My name is Don McCodrum. I petition you to afford me a few extra moments, as I've asked many of our extra speakers to forego their testimony in lieu of
Sorry,
mine.
we're going to hold you to 1 minute. 'Cause
All right.
we got to bring staff back up too.
Understand. Okay. We, as the Home and Residential Energy Efficiency Trade Association, we are at the forefront of every single energy efficiency program as it relates to homes in Oregon. And we are building science practitioners. So when we look at these home energy scores, we know that this is really to address you, Commissioner Fish, that we know that we can rely on multiple tiers of quality control and training and certification to ensure that we've got accurate scoring. We strongly support this as a two-tiered strategy. It's both to insert the energy costs into the purchase process, but it's also to have the score in the hands of the buyers when they're in the most likely position to make upgrades, which is in the first 3 months of their sale. Lastly, I think that this is going to be the single greatest thing to increase energy literacy of the general public. I think that has not been mentioned, and I think that that's a really worthy cause. Thank you so much for this hearing.
Thank you. Okay, we have one, maybe two. Okay, you're the last two. Come on up. Okay, so go ahead, just give us your name. You just have 1 minute, and there's a clock in front of you.
Thank you, Commissioners. This is Roger Kainu. I'm an analyst with the Oregon Department of Energy and part of the House Bill 2801 Energy Task Force. We have a stakeholder panel that's been developed by the state of Oregon to bring all of the framework together for home energy performance scoring. And I want to make a key note here about performance. Home energy scoring could be seen as just a list of assets within a home. Performance deals with how those assets interrelate and interact. It's a building science and really needs to be taken a look at. You know, it's not just a list of all the assets that are there. It's how they interrelate together and create a performance, which in the end creates a score. That's what the HES with the United States Department of Energy builds for us. So an assessor goes out, takes track of all the assets, puts them into a software, spits it back out, and it becomes a score of that residence. So with House Bill 2801, we developed a stakeholder panel, an approval process for each scoring system. We have training requirements and licensing of all the assessors, and there are assessors out there available. Outputs of the work have been state-approved scoring systems like the Energy Trust of Oregon, the US DOE model, HES, and then we moved into certification licensing of the assessors, the technical capability that aligns with the US DOE at a national level. So it's not just an independent sort of scoring system, it's across the nation. Also want to be able to mention that utility bill analysis is one way of getting information, but it's very inaccurate. It's been going on for 30 years that I know of. Customers call utilities and say, hey, what did the energy bills look like? You may have a family of 5 living there for years, and all of a sudden a family of 2 moves in. How does that compare?
Okay, thank you very much.
I need to ask a question. Sorry. So is what we have before as the kind of performance score that you were mentioning?
Absolutely.
So you support it?
Absolutely.
And could you just tell me a little bit more about why isn't it just adding up all the assets and turning out a number?
Well, if you have a leaky duct system in a house and a very expensive high-performance piece of heating equipment, the outcome of that performance is much lower than if you have a high-performance heating equipment with a very well-sealed, tight duct system.
But wouldn't the leakiness of the ducts be part of the audit?
It would list that is part of an asset, not as a system. It doesn't compare and pull together the interrelationship of those two individual items.
Okay, thank you very much. That's very,
Thank
so
you.
you're supportive of what we have ahead?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
My name is Barbara Kerr, and I'm speaking as a concerned citizen. Very quickly, I'm juggling my notes around here, trying to pare them down. As a teacher, I know that the best way for people to learn is from real-life experiences. And so knowing the energy efficiency of their house or their neighbor's house has a lot more impact than glossy brochures and any list of statistics ever will. The report could help to clear up misconceptions about energy use of houses because it would be real-life information, and such as that old windows must be replaced. We now know that repairing rather than replacing can have a far lower carbon impact. Oftentimes, a new house may be built to code, but still have features in it that use a lot of energy that the people may not understand. Your hot tub, your extra large open spaces, et cetera. And in the bigger picture, giving them the carbon footprint of their house and being able to compare it to what may happen, the carbon footprint of tearing the house down and building a new one, can really educate our public on the long-term benefits of carbon footprint of saving our existing houses.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, let's bring staff back up. I know we have some questions. So just a procedure check, I mean, do we have some amendments in front of us, which?
Yes.
Are we prepared to act on those amendments now, or do we need more time?
So
We'll see where the questions go, I guess.
let me raise some questions, and then is your goal to have this come back for a second reading next week?
Yeah, I think it was intended to come back December 7th because the mayor is out next week.
So that gives us a little more latitude. So I'm going to just put the questions on the record, and I don't need answers right now in light of the time. What I would ask is just a written response to these questions early next week, or next week. We have a holiday weekend. Number one, on the question of whether we exempt new construction, could you amplify on the commentary that's in the council document about the difference between code-built new homes and high-performance new homes? We've heard from a number of people, and Dan got at this in one of his questions, that the new home construction is close to the top of the scale. So I guess the question is, why do we disagree with that? What's the range that we anticipate? And why do you believe we should include new homes? I'd also be interested in knowing why Austin exempted new homes, just as a policy matter. Number two, if you can guesstimate for me how many transactions you anticipate in the first year into this program would involve low-income homeowners, because there are a number of questions that have been raised, particularly around people's privacy and the potentially triggering predatory practices. And one of the things I'd like to know is if it's a small enough universe, could the city partner with the utilities to create a voucher that offsets the cost so the person gets the score but doesn't have to pay for it? That seems to me to meet our objective while reducing, and since Northwest Natural and others seem to be so bullish on this, could we partner with the utilities to cover that cost? I'm assuming it's a manageable universe of people that would
It's
otherwise.
about 5%.
About 5%?
Of
If
the-
you can quantify that, but I'd like
We
to know
will.
what that would look like.
Yep.
Because my preference would be to have everyone play, but if someone can't afford it, to find a way to offset the cost. And I think that balances privacy and whatever you've identified as the needs here. Susan, at some point, I hope you do come forward with a proposal to ban gasoline-powered leaf blowers. In my new apartment, I hear them every Saturday morning, starting about 6, and they're not only annoying in terms of the sound, but when reading about the environmental impact, I'm not sure why we shouldn't be banning them. And then on the question of how you, in the alternative, how you structure the deferral waiver exemption program. Again, if you could drill down a little bit and just see, have we captured the universe of people who are already covered by a program that would give them an exemption where all they have to do is check a box and sign it and not have to produce tax returns or other things. And finally, Those are all my questions. Thank you.
Commissioner Fritz?
Thank you. Some of mine are similar. I'd like to know, is there possibly a default choice for new construction, that if it's just built to code, it's this score, and they can apply if they want to show that it's a high performance, so that they, presumably you would know what the codes are and what kind of a score you're most likely to get. From the testimony, I'd be kind of surprised if it's a 9 or a 10 all the time. So I'd like to have that looked into. I don't support having it posted on portlandmaps.com or any other public. I think it's fine to post it on the seller's description of the house, but as far as having it required to be on a government website, I don't think that that's very helpful. So I'd like to propose an amendment for that at some point. Also, the question was raised about how long the score is good for, and if it's mostly based on the structural assets of the house, then again, could the seller default, say this is what it is, this is what it was, I haven't done anything else, be able to put it forward. On the other hand, if they want to show that they've done all the repairs, that they could then ask for a new, well, they could get themselves a new audit. I don't support having buyers required to get it within the first 4 months. I think that people often have, when I moved into my house, I was busy trying to figure out how to get the coat hangers put up and all kinds of other things, not thinking about how can I spend even more money on this on this house. So I would like that removed. And potentially, one of the ways to get around the issue of if a seller can't pay, and if the buyer at the transaction time, you make your offer contingent on the inspection turning out all right. Perhaps they could also make it contingent on the audit turning out at a particular number. And at that point, the buyer could be willing to pay for the cost, just like they pay for the cost of the inspection. And so that could happen, or otherwise they could initial at closing that they've waived their right to do that. And I think that's a way of maybe helping people get the information that they need as home buyers, but you don't get the inspection done until you've pretty much set your heart on a particular property. So I think that we need to have mechanisms that as the listing price, as the listing of the property, that's when buyers can best do the cost comparison. If you've already set your heart on a property, paid for the inspection, and then, yes, that you've got around the issue of unexpected expenses, but I just don't know that that's going to sway the
I just want to clarify that 4-month thing was only for the low-income proponents. Other than that, everyone is being required to do this as the seller before the home is listed.
Right, no, I understand that, but I just don't think that that's very helpful to the buyer to then be required to do what the seller was not able to do. Why would?
No, the buyer won't have to do this. We were only suggesting that as part of a response if the seller was a low-income seller and not able.
It was in the presentation.
Is what you're suggesting, Commissioner, that in the cases where a low-income seller qualifies for the deferral, so they wouldn't get it, you're suggesting in those circumstances, the buyer doesn't need to get it. That house just that transaction happens without a score.
Correct.
Okay.
And the buyer initials to say so, rather than having to come back to you 4 months later saying I have or I haven't done that.
Understood.
I think those are most of my concerns. We did hear, I appreciate hearing from Commissioner-elect Daly. That's very good to have her perspective here. I think there was a lot of discussion about equity issues, and particularly the concern that landlords would pass on the cost to renters and even might be the cause of more no-cause evictions. So I really appreciate the thought that's gone into it. I do finally have to say that the financial impact and public involvement statement in this is possibly the best I've ever seen. It's really inclusive. I do appreciate the testifier from Apano saying that his group and others may not feel that they've been that engaged, and so certainly we need to be aware of that. I'm glad you came to make that point. And I think you all have shown me over the last 4 to 8 years that we're always aware of what public involvement is and how we can do better. So, but I did appreciate having all that documented. It made it very much easier for me to figure this out.
And we should acknowledge Kyle Diesner, who did the work on that. So
I had a couple of questions, and Commissioner Fish has a couple additional questions. I guess I too am wondering about new construction exemptions. The testimony about the ORS 469, whether that prohibits us from disclosing. And I guess I do share a policy concern similar to what Commissioner Fritz just articulated about putting any information associated with a name on Portland maps or anywhere. And then there was a testimony, I guess I'm wondering about the timeliness of audits too. So I think Ms. Gilla raised this issue. So suppose I'm a geek and I want to go out and get a home energy audit just because I want to know what my home is, and I get it, and I decide not to do anything about it, and then I decide to sell my house 2 years later. Can I use that home energy audit so give us some discussion on that. And then also the question, which you can answer in writing, is sale of multifamily units. Where is that covered or not covered under our commercial or residential policies?
Currently not covered.
Okay. And Commissioner Fish?
So I missed two questions, and then I'm going to move the amendments. In your disclosure, your impact statement for the council, it lists public involvement, has a public involvement statement, and it says that you reached out to organizations representing communities of color and tenants, organizations representing homeowners with low, moderate, or fixed incomes, and affordable housing advocates and program implementers. And I would say, in light of the Apano testimony, could you just tell us in writing which groups you reached out to that qualify for that are covered by those categories? And second, we had one or two people testify that this could alter the underwriting. Now, we know that underwritings become a lot tighter because of federal law, among other things. And so I'd like your feedback on that. Did in Austin, for example, did they have an experience with underwriting becoming more stringent and requirements around addressing energy efficiency being worked into the financing and the closing requirements? Yes or no? And or what is the evidence that this disclosure in and of itself is going to change the equation in terms of underwriting and what banks require at closing? And with that, colleagues, I'd like to move the amendments as a package.
Okay. Is there a second?
I can second that. I'm also going to make some more amendments.
Yeah,
Yes,
so we
the
just-
three that are on the table.
And so I've moved and seconded, and by doing so, this allows us to vote on these when we come back on the 7th, and it doesn't preclude us from now or in the future modifying them or proposing new amendments. But Amendment 1 does address this question of solutions to cover upfront costs of policy compliance. That was something I raised in my question, because my preference would be to have everyone play, but have some way to offset the cost for those who can't cover it. 2 would give Susan or her successor or designee the right to temporarily suspend or modify under certain circumstances. And 3 is a report back to council prior to the implementation. So I move all 3.
Okay. Moved and seconded. Please call the roll.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Mr. Fritz?
So I'd like to move an amendment similar to number 3, that Bureau of Planning and Sustainability will develop a process to streamline scores for new construction, at least on the same timeline as number 3. So no fewer than 2 months prior to the effective date, when they're going to come back to us anyway.
So I'm not clear. What would your amendment do?
It would be to develop a process to streamline the scores for new construction.
Okay. Yeah, I guess procedurally, I just want to check with us, because I'm hoping that the information we get back may serve as a basis for potential amendments I would bring forward on the 7th. Now, I realize that would require another reading, but, we still got time to do that.
Or we could slap an emergency on it.
Yeah. So, I think some of the questions I have are along the same
Yeah,
questions you
so
have
would you
about new
just prefer
construction.
to wait to do that?
Yeah, I'd prefer, rather than trying to do it today and needing all 3 of us to support it, let's get the information back from staff. And if we need to vote on new amendments on the 7th, let's do it on the 7th.
Okay. And so that my other one, so there'd be one on the streamlining for new construction, and the Amendment 5 would be not posting on Portland Online, or Portland Maps. And I'm just wondering why was that included in the proposal in the first place?
Pardon?
Why was the posting it on portlandmaps.com part of the procedure in the first place.
Without disclosure, this policy falls apart. It needs to be visible. We could put the requirement on the realtors to put it on the listings.
Yeah.
We chose not to do that.
Why?
We thought that would get an even less warm reaction than we got.
Well, they're required to list what school district they're in and what the property taxes are, so I don't really think that this is all that much different.
Well, there's
Okay,
another,
well,
there's
give
another
us some more information on it.
Yeah, there's another
Yeah, get back to
complication
us.
here, because if you're requiring that this information be shared with the city, I assume it becomes a public record.
Yeah, and then you, as Commissioner Salzman pointed out, then you've identified people who are low income and make them even more of a target for predatory home sales.
Unless we get a score for everybody.
Right,
then
so
that
we'll
counts as
explain all this and we'll provide it back to you before you.
Okay, and we are recessed until 2 o'clock.
Thank you very much, President.
So what else is in Portland now?